Chapter 1148. This time, the two of them were completely stumped. If it was a needle, anyone could make it. However, it required a hole in the middle, which was difficult. The needle was so thin, but if it was like this, Zhang Feng explained the infusion needle in detail. Only then did Mokito realize, if that's the case, this old servant is willing to give it a try. However, I might not be able to make it. Give me 2 days. Zhang Feng shook his head and extended a finger. 1 day, only 1 day. Hearing this, the two of them could not help but change their expression slightly. However, they still nodded heavily and left in a hurry. When they left, they took away the infusion needle that Zhang Feng had given her, as well as the syringe and the needle manufacturing blueprints. Then, he said to Mokito, I heard that you were a top glaze master in the western region. An expert glaze master in the world. Mokito repeatedly declined, not daring to call himself an expert. Zhang Feng smiled and said, You are worthy of this title. Don't decline. I don't have so many rules here. If you can do it, you can. If you can't, you can't. This is what you have to do. Hearing this, Merkel was a little touched. However, she did not know what he wanted to do. She stood silently at the side, seemingly knowing what he was worried about. Seeing this, Zhang Feng said, Actually, you don't have to worry so much. Here, you are just like home. What are you worried about? Actually, I have something here. If you are willing, I can pass it to you now and let you go back to your old profession. Zhang Feng explained the concept of the infusion tube and the infusion bottle. When he went to Chewing Gum's place, Zhang Feng wanted to talk about this. However, although the two of them had been in contact with rubber for a while, if they wanted to make such a high-end product, Zhang Feng was probably thinking about it himself. That was why he asked Mokito. With Zhang Feng's detailed explanation, the glass bottle and the infusion set were easy to make. However, the main problem was the infusion tube made of rubber. He could not help but feel a little troubled. He knew about rubber because it was sometimes used when making glazes. However, at this time, he had to make a plastic tube completely out of rubber. What was plastic? How could it be used to make a rubber tube? Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't explain, so he simply found a piece of rubber from the rare treasures that the 5 surnames and 7 hopes had given him this time. He then found a small copper bowl and placed it on top of the oil lamp to slowly boil it. A piece of rubber about the size of a fingernail was placed in the bowl of soup and let it boil. Mokito's eyes were fixed on the boiling process in the copper bowl. The process was very long. The two of them chatted about other things and Mokito's progress with the firearms. After about 2 hours, the piece of rubber that was originally the size of a fingernail had become as clear as water. Zhang Feng then stood up and took a medium-sized bamboo stick from the broom. He brought it to me in chewing gum and said, Look carefully. This is the method to make this flexible tube. As he spoke, Zhang Feng used the mud to make a mold that looked like a brick. Then, he slowly pressed the bamboo stick in his hand down and made a mold. Then, he carefully poured the boiled rubber into the bowl. Halfway through, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped and filled up the bamboo skewers in his hand. He pressed and rolled them in the gaps between the skewers. Then, he poured the real rubber on the bamboo skewers back into the bowl. He increased the flame of the oil lamp and continued to boil. After a while, Zhang Feng took out a sharp knife and cut the solidified rubber along the surface of the mold until it was flat. Then, he carefully took out the translucent thing that was stained with a lot of mud and put it aside. Then, he made another mold and used the same method to pour the other half in and cut it again. At this time, Zhang Feng said, Look carefully. This is the most important part. While speaking, Zhang Feng used an even smaller bamboo stick to evenly spread the rubber in the bowl on the half of the mold. After he finished, Zhang Feng carefully connected the other half. Only then did Zhang Feng let out a deep sigh of relief. In fact, he didn't know how to make this thing. The key was that he didn't know how to teach, so he could only wait for the plastic pipe to solidify. After that, Zhang Feng cleaned the mud on it. After cleaning it, he left a transparent pipe that was the size of a chopstick. Zhang Feng sent the pipe to Mokito. Mokito was instantly shocked. He took the pipe with both hands. The pipe was very soft, like a dried yongjing. It was quite elastic. When he looked at the end of the pipe, he saw that there was a pipe in the middle. It was the size of a small bamboo stick. Mokito couldn't help but ask, "Is this the pipe you were talking about?" Gao Feng nodded, "I want this kind of thing." "Now, you know what to do, right?" When Mokito saw this, he held the tube like it was a treasure and nodded heavily, "I understand." Then, he hesitated for a moment. Then, he took out a summary of the medical equipment and sent it to Mokito. "Keep this thing carefully. Don't spread it. This is my secret." Chapter 1149. Mokito was so emotional that he almost knelt down in front of Zhang Feng. He grabbed Zhang Feng with his trembling hand and choked with sobs for a long time. In the end, Zhang Feng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "If you want to thank me, get it out before tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, or better yet, at this time tomorrow night, I want it in my hands." Mokito wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and nodded heavily. Then, he walked out of Zhang Feng's room. It was another sleepless night. For many people, it was an ordinary night. However, for many people, it was the beginning of a difficult month, especially on Shao Mountain. The people of White Deer College. Niu Jinhu's leg injury was imminent. Although the wound's infection had been temporarily suppressed, the result was still imminent. Many people, whether it was White Deer College or Chang'an City, had their eyes fixed on the mountain. They were all waiting for Zhang Feng to succeed. The lights in Zhang Feng's room were not turned off for the entire night. Only when the sound of running exercises could be heard did Zhang Feng slowly drag his tired body to a chair in front of the door and sit down. After washing his face with cold water, he hurriedly walked to Sun Simiao's bamboo house. Sun Simiao was brewing tea. When he saw Zhang Feng, he was not surprised. He poured a cup of tea for Zhang Feng and said, "I heard that you didn't sleep last night." Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Because there is no time. Xiaohu's leg cannot be delayed any longer. Tomorrow is the last day, so," Sun Simiao smiled. "So you want to let the old man do it now, right?" He nodded and said, "To be safe, I still want to test it to prevent any mistakes." "Old man, I've thought about it a long time ago. Even if you didn't mention it, I would have thought about it too. I'll look for you later. I heard that Lao Li and the others will come to the mountain to watch tomorrow." Zhang Feng didn't know who spread the news, but he still nodded in tacit agreement. Sun Simiao didn't say anything. He just looked at Zhang Feng and received it. "Last night, I heard from Old Fart that a lamb in the sheep pen on the mountain broke its leg when it climbed over the fence." Zhang Feng couldn't believe it. How could it be so coincidental? However, he still heard Sun Simiao say, "The sheep are already prepared next door. Let's go to Old Gao's place now. There are fewer people there and no one will disturb us. It should be a good place to go." Zhang Feng nodded. "Let's give it a try. But there's one thing, Elder Sunday." This time, without waiting for him to finish, Sun Simiao laughed and said, "I know what you want to say. I've discussed your matter with Mr. Bosher and the others. Isn't it because the situation is unclear at this time? Don't worry. When the time comes, I'll announce that these things were made by me. It won't cause you any trouble. What do you think?" Zhang Feng couldn't help but hesitate. He stared at Sun Simiao, who looked indifferent. I didn't expect Elder Sun to do this. I'm afraid that it will affect Elder Sun's reputation. Why don't we think of other ways? A person values himself very much. Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of one thing. That was the profession of a doctor. Especially doctors in ancient times. They all lived by reputation. If such a thing happened at this time, it was very likely that something unexpected would happen. Some people might not be able to practice medicine because of this. However, Sun Simiao laughed and said, "Kid, you're thinking too much. What do you think the old man relied on to become a student? He relied on the old man's magnanimity. If the old man felt that it was right, he would do it. The old man never cared about reputation. As long as it was useful, it was the right thing to do. So I'll give you a piece of advice. Sometimes reputation is a good thing, but sometimes it's a poison that harms people." Zhang Fang's expression changed. He hurriedly bowed and said, "I'll remember the Church of Grace." Sun Simiao nodded with satisfaction. After drinking a cup of tea with Zhang Feng, he said, "Let's go. Let's go see that lamb." At this time, the farm was very quiet. The infusion was basically done here on Monday. Jingtufu had already moved to the foot of the mountain. Only Gao De and Ma Zhou were left here. Although it was a little dirty, it was considered a quiet place in White Deer College. More than half of the pigs in the farm, as well as pigs, sheep, chickens, ducks, geese, and other animals, had disappeared. Some were eaten by the people on the mountain, but more were sent to the tables of the people in Chang'an. As for the farm, at this time, there were only a few boars and sows that were deliberately left behind. There was also a group of piglets that were playing around, as well as a dozen groups of chickens, ducks, and geese that were leisurely strolling around. At this time, thinking about it again, it was simply a world of difference from a month ago. A month ago, this place was known as the first in the entire Chang'an city and even the surrounding areas of Chang'an. But now, this place seemed so empty. The wild grass frantically exuded its fragrance in the farm. Before it could sway in the wind, a little piglet's mouth sniffed it and then bit it off. Chapter 1150. He grew healthily and became the pig's delicacy. Then, he grew with all his might, and the pig nibbled on him again. The cycle repeated itself. Elder Gao seemed to have known that Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao were coming. He was already waiting at the door. When he saw the two of them, Elder Gao cupped his fists and gestured for them to enter. "The second floor is ready. The hot water and all other aspects are also prepared. We can begin now." Zhang Feng didn't say anything. He just followed Sun Simiao into the spacious room that used to belong to Butcher Zheng. It was now empty. A lamb was placed on the table in the middle of the room. It was tied up on the table, and its left front hoof drooped weakly on the edge of the table. When the lamb saw them enter, it looked at them in horror. Its mouth moved as if it was asking them what they were going to do. Zhang Feng patted the lamb's head and said, "Then when do we start?" "Now, let's start now," Sun Simiao said as he organized his medicine box. There was no time now. The failure of the mule experiment last time left a huge psychological shadow on Sun Simiao. At this moment, Sun Simiao seemed to be afraid to face it. Seeing this, Zhang Feng didn't say anything. The two of them carefully cut open the lamb's skin. There weren't any clamps or the like at this time, so they could only let Ma Zhou hold the cut-open skin. After all, it wasn't Ma Zhou's first time doing something like this. Although he was good at it, he still felt a little pale when he made such a big cut on a lamb's leg. Even so, he still wanted to see what Zhang Feng was going to do. He also wanted to see the miraculous result. After doing all this, Zhang Feng basically plucked all the hair off the lamb's leg. The skin below the thigh and the part above the hoof were all peeled off. Because it had been fed the anesthetic soup beforehand, the lamb looked at them in horror. Its head rubbed against Zhang Feng's hand from time to time as if it was asking, "What is this? What are you doing?" Zhang Feng didn't explain all this to the lamb. He didn't want to. In no time at all, he had separated all the muscles on the lamb's body according to the location of the fascia. The lamb's bones had been broken into two. One of the bones had already popped out, while the other was inserted into the bone marrow of the other broken bone. Zhang Feng looked at the wound. Although he felt a little disgusted, he endured it and cleaned the wound. Then, he put down the dagger and looked at Elder Sunday. "It's up to you now." Sun Simiao nodded. Although this was his first time personally handling a knife, he was only an assistant the last time he was in the military camp. Therefore, it was inevitable that he would be nervous for the first time. Fortunately, the lamb's leg was completely cut open. After the muscles that wrapped around the bone were all cut open, the broken bone was taken out and soaked in alcohol to disinfect it. Then, according to Zhang Feng's instructions, he slowly looked for the cracks of the broken bone and pieced it back together. After all this was done, they naturally stitched up the muscle and fixed it. Zhang Feng didn't have to worry about this. After all, Sun Simiao had done it before, so he was quite familiar with it. Although it seemed very simple, it still took a full 4 hours to complete. When the two of them stopped, they were sweating profusely. However, he realized that old Gao and Ma Zhou were staring blankly at the lamb leg that had recovered to its original state with pale faces. The leg of the lamb was restored, and even the outer fur was sewn back. However, the broken part of the leg was firmly fixed with pieces of bamboo. After doing all this, Sun Simiao pulled out the acupuncture needles from the lamb's body one by one. The lamb still didn't seem to feel anything. It shook its hooves and realized that they were touching its hooves. It panicked and used its nose to rub the bamboo on the ladder. It even stuck out its tongue and sneezed a few times. Sun Simiao said, "Make it drink all the things we prepared. Let me know when the effect of the anesthetic is over." After finishing all this, the two of them dragged their tired bodies back to old Gao's bedroom. They drank a big jar of water before they recovered. The two of them couldn't help but smile at each other. They couldn't hide the excitement in their eyes. The lamb's experiment seemed to have succeeded. Once the effects of the anesthetics wore off, if the lamb was fine, then it would be truly alive. Chapter 1151. I didn't expect you to be so talented in this field. Before he could finish speaking, Zhang Feng gave him a thumbs up. Sun Simiao smiled and said, "In ancient times, Hua Tuo cut open the skull, and Qin Shi Huang repaired the brain. After that, Bian Ke scraped off the bones of Guan Gong to treat his wounds." Although these stories were passed down by word of mouth, and the old man had also cut open people's chests with a knife, this was the first time he had set a bone. Although he was a little unfamiliar with it, this was still the old man's first time. He had a different understanding of medicine, so he was still confident. Indeed, after coming into contact with Zhang Feng's magical medical skills, Sun Simiao had really yearned for it. However, after personally experiencing it, he felt as if he had opened a brand new door in the field of medicine. After that, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao once again studied the entire operation in detail. They even repracticed the operation with Niu Jian many times. After that, the two of them dragged their tired bodies back to their respective rooms. The moment Zhang Feng entered the room, he went to sleep. Everything was ready. He was just waiting for the night to go over and see how the lamb was recovering. If the lamb was alive. If it was alive, that meant that the success rate of Niu Jian's operation was already 90%. If there was even the slightest problem with the lamb, this matter would be a little troublesome. After all, Zhang Feng did not specialize in medicine. He only knew some general knowledge about physiology. Besides, this matter really had something to do with him. He did not want old Yu and old Nyo to be so sad. Speaking of which, this was also his mistake. Although his two old buddies wouldn't blame him, Zhang Feng still felt guilty in his heart. After scolding himself in his heart, Zhang Feng slowly fell asleep. He had not slept well for a few days. At this moment, under the exhaustion, he finally fell into a deep sleep. The Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet was imminent. With the mess at home and the mess at the academy, Zhang Feng did not have time to prepare these things. He could only beg Li Qingqian and the others to put in a little effort. After all, if they only trained one kind of street dance in 12 days, as long as they put in a little effort, there should not be any mistakes. After all, the poetry meet was mainly about poetry. Even if they made mistakes, he would be there to support them. Although it would not be perfect, it would not attract too much attention. What Zhang Feng wanted was not just a chance to become a great scholar, but more importantly, he wanted to make his name known to the world. When he woke up the next morning, the sky was still dark. Zhang Feng opened the window and allowed the cold breeze to caress his cheeks. He looked out the window at a few women from Tonghui Square carrying buckets of water, going back and forth between the cafeteria and the mountain gate. In the small wooden house's storeroom, there were faint sounds of people handing over the day's food. Everyone seemed to have been attracted by the sound of Zhang Feng opening the window. They instantly turned their heads and saw Zhang Feng get up. They all went up to greet him. There were even two bold women who joked and wanted to help him dress up. After all, Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu were gone. Zhang Feng had returned to his sloppy appearance. What time was it today? But this was the time when the three major departments of the Ministry of Works and Rights, as well as elders from all parties gathered at White Deer College to witness Zhang Feng's opportunity. If he went like this, wouldn't he be embarrassing White Deer College? However, Zhang Feng waved his hands and declined. When the two women saw this, they had no choice but to find old He and his wife. Old He's wife didn't say anything and directly pressed Zhang Feng onto a stool. With old He's wife personally handling the scythe, he finally calmed down. However, when he saw the scythe in old He's hand, he couldn't help but feel scared. He asked, "Old He, what are you doing with the scythe?" Old Ho pointed at Zhang Feng's chin and the black hair between his lips and said, "I'm shaving your beard. A man's beard needs to be trimmed to be better and thicker. Don't you know this?" Zhang Feng was so scared that his whole body trembled. He was about to go on strike. Okay, I won't shave. I'll do it myself when the time comes, okay? I won't shave today. I think it looks good like this. This is called personality. After Zhang Feng repeatedly begged for mercy, old He reluctantly put down the scythe. When he left the room, Steamed Bun had returned to the mountain. She squatted at the door with Guzi and Juzi, staring at Zhang Feng. Seeing Zhang Feng come out, Steamed Bun grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and refused to let go. Zhang Feng had no choice but to hug and touch her. Who wouldn't like such a cute little girl? The most leisurely person on the mountain now should be this little girl, right? Zhang Feng took Steamed Bun around the mountain and came to the cafeteria. He chose a few snacks and side dishes that Mo liked to eat. It was not easy to make the little girl happy. However, old He waited for Steamed Bun to finish her meal before he hurriedly took Steamed Bun away. This time, Ching Chimo's people didn't come for breakfast. It was said that they went to the mountain to run before dawn. It seemed that they also knew that Zhang Feng had been troubled recently, so they didn't dare to bother him. They were practicing the so-called street dance desperately. They didn't let anyone see it and beat up anyone who saw it. Zhang Feng was speechless. He touched his chin and looked at Guzi and Juzi who were eating the food on the second floor. He laughed and scolded, "Did I cheat you on the mountain? Can't you eat more gently?" The two laughed, but they still wolfed down the food. "It's so delicious." Brother Feng, why is the food on the second floor different from the food on the first floor? Zhang Feng smiled and didn't say anything. After a while, he asked, do you want to eat the food on the second floor? How could the two kids not want to? Their heads nodded like rattles. Seeing this, Zhang Hong laughed and said, then I'll give you a task. As long as you can familiarize yourself with the disciple rules at the end of this year, I'll make an exception and accept you as my last disciple. From now on, you'll eat whatever I eat. Chapter 1152. The two naturally didn't know what the disciple rules were. Not to mention these, they didn't even know how to read. Zhang Feng's promise to them was just a joke, but it also gave them a reason to keep up with the others. A goal to stand out. After accompanying the two of them to eat, when they walked out of the cafeteria, they saw Ma Zhou anxiously walking back and forth at the entrance of the cafeteria. He was holding a steamed bun made of brown rice in his hand and eating it with relish. Zhang Feng looked at the cafeteria in surprise and said, did you not release the tickets or something? Why are there so many delicacies? Why are you eating this thing? Ma Zhou smiled awkwardly, I'm used to it. I still have to save money. Buying books is more important. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He was too lazy to argue with him. He asked, why are you waiting here so early? Tell me. Hearing this, Ma Zhou's face flashed with excitement and said, I want you to see something good. Now that Dr. Sun has gone, you are the only one left. After hearing this, Zhang Hong realized that he should be treating the lamb. Then she hurried back to the farm with Chairman Ma. In the yard of the farm, the expert and Dr. Sun were squatting in the yard and staring at a little lamb. One of the little lamb's legs was tied with a bamboo splint. However, it was limping and bleeding happily on the grass. While eating grass, from time to time, it would use its mouth to nudge the hooves tied with the bamboo splint and bleat twice. It seemed to bleat twice as if it was complaining to everyone, wanting them to take down the ugly thing. Seeing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but be overjoyed. He asked, Elder Gao, is this the lamb from yesterday? Sun Simiao laughed and stroked his beard, what do you think? Several people couldn't help but laugh heartily. After laughing, Sun Simiao patted the medical kit next to him and said, this operation is no small matter. Wait, I heard that it should be at 12:15. They will all come to watch. Where are you going to do the operation? When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but have a dignified expression. If so many people came to see it, logically speaking, it should be placed in an open area outside. However, there were too many bacteria outside, and it wasn't easy to do this. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng suddenly slapped his head and said, I'm going to put it in the teaching building. Can't the teaching building do that? No. That's a place where we read the books of the sages. If we see something like that, we'll see blood. Moreover, the mountain gate hasn't even opened yet. It's very inauspicious. Zhang Feng waved his hand. What's wrong with that? Didn't the academy set up military science and medical science for the first time? Let's treat this as a medical lesson for the entire academy. What do you think? Sun Simiao still strongly objected, but at this time, the expert praised, Prince Zhang's method is very good. I think it's feasible. Old Sun, don't be entangled in these clichés. Which rule in the academy do you think is strictly adhered to? While speaking, the expert pointed at the lamb's leg. Sun Simiao was stunned, and then he heaved a heavy sigh of relief. That's right, if I pay too much attention to these things, then I'd rather not do it. In that case, he might as well not do it. Everything that Zhang Feng was doing now was so shocking. If he had to take this into consideration, then what was the point of doing it? Fine. Since it's like this, then I'll do as Fengzi said. Today, the sky was still beautiful. In the boundless blue sky, there wasn't even a trace of cloud to be found. Before dawn, carriages appeared at the mountain gate one after another. At first, the old village head at the gate personally welcomed them, but as more and more people came, the old village head became numb. He just nodded and clasped his hands to the people who came. Then he found a student and introduced the academy to them while leading them into the already prepared classroom. Naturally, the old village head didn't need to introduce people he was familiar with. He didn't have so much free time. The classroom was painted snow white, and at this moment, one could still vaguely smell the smell of lime. However, such a bright classroom made everyone abnormally excited, and it added a sense of solemnity to the atmosphere. The tables and chairs in the classroom designated by Zhang Feng were all moved away, leaving only the operating table in the middle prepared by Zhang Feng. A thick white blanket was spread on the operating table, and a sterilized white wool skin was placed on top of it to prevent the blood from flowing. In the classroom, there was a smell of mugwort smoked and baked. Even the ground was sprinkled with a thick layer of quicklime to disinfect. At this time, the smell of lime had already covered the smell of mugwort. Originally, the windows of the academy's teachers were made according to the glass windows in the back room. However, there was no time to make transparent glass, so at this time, although there were iron rods and other things, they were all white pieces of paper. This was also the detestable part of the academy. It was good to have white paper, but at this time, the window paper had already been poked with holes of various sizes. Chapter 1153. A group of people blocked the classroom door, as well as the window, staring. They looked at Niu Jinhu, who was lying on a bed, blinking, discussing something. When had Niu Jinhu ever seen such a scene? These people here were all big shots. Moreover, they had come especially for him. As he lay on the bed and greeted everyone with a smile, he urged Zhang Feng to hurry up. Zhang Feng was so angry that he threatened him that if he dared to move again, his legs might not be guaranteed. Only then did Niu Jinhu hurriedly shut his mouth. Li Shimin did not come. But Li Yuan came late, with his hands behind his back, ignoring everyone's dissuasion. He walked straight into the classroom and sat next to Niu Jinhu. Soon after, a servant set up a small table next to him and put some incense on it. There was even a small tea stove. Zhang Feng glared at Li Yuan and had an impulse to kill someone. But the more Li Yuan ignored him, the more he sat down to boil tea and drink. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only sigh and no longer care about him. He did not see him at that time. After everyone had arrived, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao looked at each other, nodded and said, "Then let's start." "Wait for Feng Zi." At this time, Niu Jinhu was anxious and said, "My father doesn't seem to have come." Just as Zhang Feng was about to make a move, Lu Jinhu did not find him in the crowd. Although Niu Jinhu was not afraid of death, he also hoped that his father was by his side. Zhang Feng looked out the window after hearing this, but he really did not see him. He looked at Yu Qigong outside the door and said, "Pervert old Yu, why didn't old Niu come?" Yu Qigong looked to the side. Speechless, he said, "What, you still want me to invite you?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng knew that Niu Jinda had come long ago, but he did not want to see Niu Jinhu's current state. He heard that his father came. Only then did Niu Jinhu lie down in satisfaction. He put on a generous appearance and said, "Come." Seeing this, Sun Simiao passed a bowl of numbing soup and sleeping pills to Niu Jinhu after getting Zhang Feng's permission. Seeing this, Niu Jinhu gulped it down without hesitation and even waved his hand at the door. Seeing this, Sun Simiao said, "Fengzi, should we make some preparations?" Sun Simiao was the one who had stage fright. Zhang Feng waved his hand and looked at Yu Qigong. "Old Yu, I remember that there were still 2 Turks left after the blood transfusion. Where are they?" Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Was this kid really going to use the blood exchange life-prolonging technique? Everyone could not help but stare unblinkingly at Zhang Feng. Yu Qigong said, "Wait a moment. That's good. Look at me. I can't believe I forgot something so important." He didn't forget about it. In fact, he had already prepared it. He just wanted to see if this kid really needed it. Yu Qigong hurriedly waved his hand. A person who had been washed clean and tied up like a dumpling was carried into the classroom by two strong men. As soon as he entered the classroom, the Turk had already been washed clean. Zhang Feng could even faintly smell the scent of alcohol on him. It seemed like they had learned from Zhang Feng and forced him to drink. However, that kind of alcohol was useless. It could only make the blood more active, which was not beneficial to Niu Jinhu at all. However, Zhang Feng could not say it out loud. He cupped his fists at everyone and said, "For White Deer College, the first medical class of the year officially begins." At this moment, two voices sounded from outside the door. "Brother Zhang Feng, please wait a moment. Can we come in and take a look?" The person who spoke was Ouyang Kai. He was standing at the back of the crowd. Seeing Ouyang Kai and the others wave their hands, Zhang Feng was a little hesitant. However, looking at Li Yuan's arrogant appearance, he finally clenched his teeth and said, come in. As long as you guys can take it, what's the harm in coming in? The premise is that you guys can take it. Don't make a sound." The two of them were very excited. They hurriedly swore before hurriedly entering the classroom. Seeing this, He Zhongjing and old Qian wanted to enter as well. However, the moment the three of them reached the door, they hurriedly shrank back when they saw Li Yuan. Ouyang Kai, Yu, and Lu Hongwen also knew Li Yuan. However, they were here on behalf of the Academy for the academic exchange. They had already reached a consensus with Zhang Feng regarding this matter. The three academies had formed an alliance, so it was still acceptable. They just pretended not to know and pretended to be calm. However, Li Yuan did not even look at the two of them. This made them feel a little embarrassed. After all, why would a person of his level care about a few small shrimps? After everything was prepared, Zhang Feng saw the effects of the Mephisan slowly appear. Niu Jinhu also felt a little sleepy. At this moment, Zhang Feng used his finger to poke Niu Jinhu's leg and asked, "Little Hu, do you feel it?" Hearing this, the sleepy Niu Jinhu shook his head dully. In the end, he fell into a deep sleep. Only at this moment did Zhang Feng let out a sigh of relief and said, "Let's begin." Following Zhang Feng's call to begin, everyone did not dare to breathe loudly. They stared at Zhang Feng with their eyes wide open. That Li Yuan even put down the tea that he had picked up. With his hands behind his back, he stood up and looked at the dagger in Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao's hands. As for Ouyang Kai, Yu, and Lu Hongwen, the two of them stared at Zhang Feng with a face full of curiosity. They wanted to see how exactly he would start this so-called bone setting. Zhang Feng fixed the Turk, who had been drunk in advance, on a shelf at the side. Then, he washed the transparent glass flat and the pages of the book that he had rushed to make overnight with alcohol. Only then did he nod at Sun Simiao. Seeing this, Sun Simiao used alcohol to gently wipe the Turk's carotid artery. Then, he wiped Niu Jinhu's arm. After that, Zhang Feng used a rubber bandage to tie Niu Jinhu's arm, making his blood vessels protrude. Then, he used a needle to gently prick the Turk's neck. With this prick, the blackened blood instantly flowed along the rubber tube and into the glass bottle. Seeing what was inside, everyone could not help but be shocked. Was this that kind of blood exchange technique? Chapter 1154. After everything was done, the blood slowly filled up about half of the infusion bottle. Zhang Feng then slowly inserted the needle on the other side into Niu Jinhu's arm. After a cycle was formed, and Niu Jinhu did not have any abnormalities. Only then did Sun Simiao examine Niu Jinhu in detail. He slowly inserted the 99 silver needles into his various acupoints. After that, Zhang Feng covered Niu Jinhu's body with a piece of white cloth. Only his face and injured leg were exposed. At this moment, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Yu Qigong's expression changed slightly. He looked at Niu Jinda, then at Niu Jinhu, and then at Zhang Feng. He saw a flash of disappointment in Zhang Feng's eyes, and he couldn't help but frown. Logically speaking, this white thing filled with bad luck was meant for people who had passed away, right? Why did this kid give it to Niu Jinhu? Could it be that he had no other choice? Was he just doing his best? At this moment, almost everyone present had such thoughts. Even Li Yuan frowned slightly. He coughed softly and hurriedly reminded Zhang Feng, "Fengzi, isn't the white cloth a little inappropriate?" "What's wrong with it?" However, as soon as the words left his mouth, Zhang Feng instantly remembered that this was the Tang Dynasty. Moreover, the people were quite wary of these things. 100 steps could not be used by living people. Except for mourning. The expressions of Zhang Feng and the others were very strange. Yu Qigong's expression was also a little pale. Zhang Feng hurriedly explained, "Everyone, don't misunderstand. The reason why this cloth is used is because this is a pure colored cloth that has just been woven. This is medical knowledge. There are irritating ingredients on the cloth that has been dyed. If it covers the body, it will be thick and troublesome. However, this batch of cloth has been boiled in boiling water and then repeatedly detoxified, so there's no other meaning. Everyone, don't worry. It's just for the sake of a more perfect success in this operation." Hearing this, everyone's expressions became slightly better. Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. He was very worried that if word of this got out, if he was careless and did not explain, if the surgery failed, how would he face old Niu? In this era, only wearing white things on one's body was tantamount to something inauspicious. Zhang Feng really didn't think of this point. Although this matter had been explained, he was still somewhat skeptical. However, Zhang Feng did not have the time to explain. After all, time was of the essence. If he delayed any longer, the weather at night would be fine, but during the day, the temperature at noon would be too high. The possibility of bacterial infection was very high. After washing his hands, he and Sun Simiao did not hesitate to gently cut open the skin and flesh above Niu Jinhu's calf bones. As soon as the two sabers slashed down, it instantly caused a wave of exclamations. Although Li Yuan was used to this kind of bloody scene, it was really the first time he saw a knife on a living person at this time. His face couldn't help but become somewhat pale at this time. Everyone's hearts were in turmoil. Ouyang Kai's entire body was trembling. This was really the first time he saw a living person cutting open the skin and flesh on the leg. That visual impact, it was simply too good. At this time, Sun Simiao was also not feeling well. He had practiced 2 or 3 times. If he were to do it now, due to the success of the lamb last time, Sun Simiao's mood was greatly relieved. He no longer had the previous worries. Although the saber in his hand was still trembling, the action of cutting open the skin and flesh still leaked out a little. After all, this was doing something on a living person. He did not dare to guarantee that nothing would happen. Now, Niu Jinhu's leg bones had been exposed for 3 days. At this time, the cells at the front of the bone were slightly dry, and the bone stubble was a little black. Zhang Feng took out the 3-edged bayonet that he had prepared in advance and used it as a brush. He rubbed away the broken parts at the front of the bone, trimmed it slightly, and cleaned the stains and coagulated blood on it. This work was very meticulous. Zhang Feng could only do it himself. When the people present heard the sound of the file, they could not help but feel their hearts churn. Even their legs were trembling. After another hour, Zhang Feng finally finished everything. He looked at Sun Simiao and said, elder son, wait for me to count to 3. When I count to 1, let's use our strength together and reset his leg bones. What do you think? Sun Simiao did not have time to answer at this time. He only nodded heavily. At this time, outside the door, and inside the door, the 3 people stood on their tiptoes and stuck their heads out to see how they were going to reset the leg bones. At this time, Zhang Feng was holding Niu Jinhu's leg. His heart was beating faster. After he was ready, he looked at Sun Simiao, who was holding Niu Jinhu's leg, and said slowly. 3, 2, 1. Pull. As Zhang Feng's voice fell, the 2 of them used their strength at the same time. Then, they slowly stretched Niu Jinhu's right leg in the opposite direction. Even though Niu Jinhu had taken anesthetics and sleeping pills, he still screamed in pain due to the intense pain. Ah! But before he finished screaming, Niu Jinhu fainted from the pain again. Chapter 1155. Zhang Feng could not care about anything else. Although the leg bone had returned to its original position, it did not mean that the matter was over. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and stared at Niu Jinhu's leg bone. After hesitating for a while, the leg that did not have much blood to begin with gushed out blood again. It was like a blowout. Zhang Feng did not care about anything else. His eyes were fixed on the bone stubble, looking for every broken crack. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. No one knew what Zhang Feng was doing. After about the time it took to eat a meal, Zhang Feng finally set the bone. However, at this moment, he looked as if he had been fished out of the water. After that, Zhang Feng took out the remaining penicillin that he had prepared beforehand and disinfected the bone. After disinfecting the bone, he quickly stitched up the fascia and muscles. Then, he cleaned up the last layer of skin and flesh. However, the blood was still gushing out crazily as if a gate had been opened. Sun Simiao hurriedly pierced another silver needle at the base of Niu Jinhu's thigh. Only then did the bleeding slow down. However, Niu Jinhu's face gradually turned pale. Although he had been receiving a continuous blood transfusion, the blood flow was too fast and the body could not bear it. Zhang Feng hurriedly urged, "Elder son, quickly suture. You go up and I'll go down." Sun Simiao checked Niu Jinhu's pulse and so on. Zhang Feng checked the eyelids and pupils. After that, the 2 of them hurriedly began to suture. However, the trickling blood instantly fermented in the lime powder in the classroom under the high temperature. The smell became strange. It was pungent and had a hint of spiciness. Everyone could not help but become more worried. This kid, could it be that he could not pull through? Quick, cotton ball. Elder son, quickly suture. Prepare the sore medicine to prevent massive bleeding. Zhang Feng looked at the blood that kept gushing out as he sutured. He was also a little panicked. In the future, there were too many of such things. Postoperative hemorrhage was a common occurrence. However, this time, it happened right in front of Zhang Feng's eyes, and he was the chief surgeon. Only then did Zhang Feng personally understand how difficult it was for a doctor to face such a situation. After that, Zhang Feng picked up some bandages that he had prepared in advance to stop the bleeding. He sewed up Niu Jinhu's wound while disinfecting it. In the end, Zhang Feng clenched his teeth and poured all the penicillin he had made himself onto the wound. Just like that, after the time it took to brew a cup of tea and a meal, Sun Simiao inserted the final needle. The surgery was finally a success. The 2 of them didn't dare to be careless. After all, Niu Jinhu's right leg was still bleeding. If it weren't for the free blood transfusion, Niu Jinhu would probably be. Sun Simiao checked Niu Jinhu's pulse and nodded. Then, together with Zhang Feng, they wrapped the bandage in their hands tightly around the wound. Basically, after wrapping a layer of gauze, they had to put a thick layer of medicine on the wound until the entire right leg was tightly wrapped. Only then did the two of them hurriedly put the bamboo splint that they had prepared in advance on Niu Jinhu. Until now. Only then did Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao start to pant heavily. Zhang Feng glanced at the Turk. They didn't know when the Turk had completed his mission. The blood flowing out of his veins was also intermittent. Seeing this, Sun Simiao looked at Niu Jinhu's leg again. Only then did he hurriedly insert needles on his leg and chest again. Zhang Feng's eyes were also fixed on Niu Jinhu's leg that was constantly bleeding. Gradually, the bleeding stopped again. Seeing this, Sun Simiao pulled off the infusion tube on Niu Jinhu's body. After doing all this, the two of them basically sat down on the ground at the same time. Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao looked at each other, then hooked their fingers at Li Yuan. They pointed at the cigarette in his hand. Li Yuan rolled his eyes. He fumbled around in his arms and took out a pure gold cigarette box. He took out 2 cigarettes and handed them to the two of them. He asked, "This, is it? This kid is fine." Zhang Feng didn't say anything. After taking a few deep puffs of the cigarette, he stood up and glanced at Niu Jinhu. He then said, "Everyone, Brother Xiaohu's leg is saved. If there are no accidents, he will be able to walk on crutches in 2 months. In half a year, he will be able to walk on the ground." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but heave a deep sigh of relief. Even Yu Qigong was so excited that he shouted, "Beautiful. I knew you could do it. Old Niu, listen, King listen, your Xiaohu is fine." Niu Jinda had been listening carefully to all the sounds in the classroom, but he didn't dare to look. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng and Yu Qigong's words, his tense body trembled slightly. Yu Qigong put his arm around Niu Jinda's shoulder and laughed. "Old man, did you hear what Feng said? Your kid is fine. In half a year, your kid will be able to jump around again. Did you hear that?" Ha 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 ha. He heard it. Niu Jinda heard everything. Although he didn't dare to make a sound or look, it was his son lying inside after all. He was more concerned about his son's safety than anyone else. After all, his Niu family only had this one seedling. At this time, when he heard Yu Qigong's words, Niu Jinda grinned. He seemed to want to enter Zhang Feng, but for some reason, his vision turned black and he slowly fell down again. Chapter 1156. At this time, everyone present began to think about what to do next. Although they had seen bone resetting, it was only a minor injury. Before coming, everyone had heard about this matter, but in everyone's opinion, this seemed to be a false rumor. After all, who could have a way to make such a serious broken bone on the street? Moreover, this bone stubble was exposed. Although before, there were indeed people who had heard about leg resetting and bone resetting, but the bones were not exposed and there were no red wounds. Brother Yong used a bamboo clip to pick him up, and after lying in bed for 1.5 years, he could still walk with a limp, but this leg, it was basically a cripple. If he wanted to recover, it could only depend on whether he was sincere to God or not. But now, they heard that someone could use the blood of the Turks to exchange blood for blood and save a person who was already judged to be dead by the King of Hell. How could this not be miraculous? The most miraculous thing was that this person could actually put the leg bone that had been broken for at least 3 days on the street. Even if it was a piece of bone from a cow or sheep, if it was left outside for 3 days, it would have smelled so bad that it couldn't be smelled. How could it be reconnected? If this was not a miracle, then what was it? The most important thing was that the person really came back to life. Although he hadn't woken up yet because of the anesthetic soup and sleeping pills, everything seemed to be getting better after Dr. Sun's diagnosis. This was no longer a problem. The most important thing was that at this time, Sun Simiao didn't say anything. What qualifications did they have to speak? After Dr. Sun's 2 hours of observation and treatment, Sun Simiao finally breathed a sigh of relief. It's done. Quickly carry him to the old man's bamboo house. Within these 10 days, the old man will take care of him personally. No one is allowed to disturb him. It's done. It's really done. This is really a miracle. At this time, everyone's mind couldn't help but become lively. The most important thing was that once this thing was done, it meant that in the future, the broken leg would be as good as new. Kid, are you sure it's really done? Of course, Li Yuan was the first to be in disbelief. He waited for Zhang Feng to catch his breath before asking. Li Yuan was not the only one who had this question. Everyone present had it. Those who were able to come here today were definitely overlords of a region. Zhang Feng also understood the importance of Li Yuan's question. He nodded heavily and said, "It is indeed done." As he spoke, Zhang Feng swept his gaze around the room, before loudly announcing, "Allow me to keep you in suspense. Today's lesson is a medical lesson of our White Deer Institute. Actually, it's quite simple. Actually, you just have to deal with the patient's wound infection and disinfect it with this alcohol that I specially made. Pay attention to your physical hygiene." Zhang Feng explained in detail the physiology and hygiene, as well as those bacterial infections and so on. Otherwise, based on these people's thoughts of Brother Feng not regretting it until he hollowed out the city walls, he could forget about living a good life from now on. After he finished talking about this, Zhang Feng said while panting, "Actually, this blood transfusion is not the kind of blood for life technique that you all understand. For example, if the water in a ditch dries up, the land in the field will also dry up. At this time, isn't the best method for us to carry water for irrigation? Similarly, at the end of the day, what little tiger lacks the most is blood. Once the body loses serious blood, if blood is not transfused, even if a deity comes, it will be impossible to save the situation. But this blood can't be used just any blood." Zhang Feng hurriedly added. "Otherwise, if this group of old fellows really went back and got someone to draw blood from, wouldn't that be a huge sin?" Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "People who need blood transfusions are usually in a situation like little tigers, or those who have suffered serious external injuries and lost too much blood. Also, there are those who have been poisoned by poisonous snakes and need blood transfusions. In this kind of situation, you only need to find a serum and use this set of medical tools that I use. After receiving reasonable training, you can use it. Under normal circumstances, the amount of blood in a person's body is only enough to fill a basin." Hearing this, Li Yuan pointed at the Turkic man on the shelf who had long lost his vital signs and said, "Then what happened to him? Didn't we just draw all his blood? If this isn't blood for life, then what is?" Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. "This is a little special. Let's put it this way. Actually, in total, we drew less than 3 bowls of blood from him. It's just that this guy was scared to death. After all, anyone who doesn't know about this situation will have such a situation. So, we still have to be careful when drawing blood. Also, if the blood type doesn't match, it can also kill people. So, the best way is to use the blood drip method to identify relatives. However, this method is not strict. It can only measure whether the blood type of 2 people matches. It has nothing to do with a paternity test. The blood identification method that you all talked about, in my opinion, is all nonsense. You must not take it seriously. If you don't believe me, you also saw that little tiger has nothing to do with this Turkic man. So, we have to be careful." Chapter 1157. After sending off this group of gods of plague and explaining the medical matters clearly to this group of uncles, Zhang Feng dragged his tired body back to Sun Simiao's bamboo house. In the bamboo house, Yu Shinan and the other three had been waiting there for a long time. Zhang Feng knew that he couldn't avoid this, but he didn't want to. After all, the appearance of a new thing, if it didn't experience the wind and rain, then what was it? As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng told Sun Simiao about the daily disinfection of the room, as well as some common knowledge, after finishing the book. Only then did he pull Yu Shinan, Li Yuan, and the others to Li Yuan's small bamboo house unwillingly. However, when they walked out of the small bamboo house, Niu Jinda was already waiting there. When he saw Zhang Feng, he knelt down with a thud. "Fengzi, you are the savior of my Niu family." When Zhang Feng heard that, his expression changed instantly. He didn't even turn his head, didn't even look at Niu Jinda, and was about to enter the small bamboo house. Seeing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng and said, "Fengzi, just let him speak. You don't know old Niu's temper. 3 generations of ancestors only had one son, and didn't I say before, when we were in the army for a few years, old Niu can't have children now because of other reasons. So," Yu Qigong said painfully, "you don't have a son, but when you get married and have children in the future, I dare to guarantee that even if you have to sacrifice your life, you will not hesitate to save your son, right?" Zhang Feng was silent. He could understand a father's fatherly love. But, with a sigh, Zhang Feng came to Niu Jinda's side helplessly, and also knelt in front of Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda was so scared that he hurriedly lifted Zhang Feng's knees, his whole body trembling. "Fengzi, are you trying to torture me? If you don't think I deserve it, why can't Lao Tzu do the same? Lao Tzu said that we're brothers. We're also brothers with Xiao Hu and the others. What's our relationship? You're someone who's only missing a stick of incense and you're going to kowtow to Lao Tzu. Have you ever treated Lao Tzu as a brother? You don't even treat Lao Tzu as a brother. Since you want to be estranged, let's see who's more estranged." Niu Jinda's face was bitter. At this moment, Li Yuan's eyes flickered as he looked at Niu Jinda, and said, "Get up, the ground is cold, your rheumatic leg problem is also not light, and you still don't know, right? Because of your son, Fengzi hasn't had a good night's sleep these days." Niu Jinda was shocked when he heard this. He raised his eyes and saw that Zhang Feng's face was extremely haggard, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was instantly at a loss of what to do. "Brother, Niu Jinda was so anxious that tears came out. Only then did Yu Qigong smooth things over. "Old Niu, with a brother, why are you still so polite? It would be strange if Fengzi was willing to do this. Moreover, Fengzi said before that other than the parents of heaven and earth, no one can kneel. Have you forgotten? Go to the mountain gate and read the commandments of the academy. All right, get up. Old man and the others still have important things to discuss with Fengzi. If you have something on your mind, doesn't Fengzi like those strange things? Go and get some for him as repayment. Usually, I don't see you being so wishy-washy." Li Yuan urged impatiently. He almost spat out a mouthful of saliva. Fortunately, he reacted in time and disturbed him. Yu Qigong was also shocked. Regardless of Niu Jinda, he hurriedly hugged him and dragged him away. The retired emperor was angry. After sending Niu Jinda away with great difficulty, they returned to the bamboo house. They could understand Niu Jinda's mood. After all, that was his only son, how could he not care? No one would. At this time, after they sat down, Li Yuan said, "Kid, do you know what it means to make it public today?" "I know." Zhang Feng nodded firmly. "This is also specially done." Chu Suiliang frowned slightly and said, "Old man, I heard that you gave your property to these people? And after this mid-autumn hunt, you invited them up the mountain for this?" "Yes." Zhang Feng nodded without hesitation. There were no outsiders here. Therefore, Zhang Feng did not hide anymore. Hearing this, Ouyang Sun coldly said, "Brat, you're playing with fire. Aren't you afraid that the wolf will turn around and eat you when it gets fat?" Zhang Feng laughed and said, "That depends on whether the bait on my fishing rod is tempting enough." Li Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. "Kid, in the previous life, Erlang came to you for this matter?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Indeed, and I asked him to come." "Kid, you know what I'm doing now. Didn't those people with the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs in Guanlong want to do something to me? Then I'll have a fight between the sandpiper and the clam. Won't that be great?" Chapter 1158. Zhang Feng was indeed playing a big game this time. If he succeeded, the 5 surnames and 7 hopes would be nothing. Moreover, he knew that Old Li definitely wouldn't be able to handle this matter. With Old Li's personality and industrial power, if he were to fight with any of the families in Guanlong, they would be able to crush him to death with just a flick of their fingers. The best way was to go to the emperor. Only with the emperor as his backing would he have the capital to challenge the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Those aristocratic families have been able to survive for hundreds and thousands of years by accumulating strength bit by bit. Although there was no lack of indifference, it did not mean that they were brainless. Therefore, this trap had to be set bit by bit. For example, the promotion of basketball, football, and morning exercises. Although it seemed that Zhang Feng did not gain any benefits, the production of football and basketball was still in Zhang Feng's hands. Even if others wanted to do it, they would have to get his permission. Otherwise, why would the matter of basketball be handed over to the county government? This was all thought out long ago. If something went wrong, it would be a direct confrontation between the government and these people. In the face of huge benefits, these people would not be so foolish. Moreover, as long as there were some basketball competitions in the future, Zhang Feng would personally train some players. In this competition, they would be invincible. How could the name of White Deer College, Zhang Feng's team, not be resounding? This meant that these people were helping Zhang Feng spread the name of the college. Moreover, Zhang Feng did nothing. Moreover, the braised meat would spread sooner or later. Du Lele was not as good as everyone else. If he did not promote something well, then it would be nothing. Moreover, Zhang Feng did not expect these things to make money. What he coveted was the 5 surnames and 7 hopes property. And the Guanlong Group's property. As long as he could trip these 2 behemoths, how much could he eat? Perhaps the richest person in the world would be Zhang Feng. Moreover, this was also a political achievement. When these 2 mountains were defeated by him, not only would he be a Grand Duke, but he would also be ranked first in the Lingyan Pavilion, and even the king who had always been side by side. It would not be a problem. Given the hatred the current emperor had for these aristocratic families, the sky was already completely dark. However, Zhang Feng and the others were still thinking about their future policy. Yu Shinan and the others were sometimes surprised repeatedly, sometimes frowning in contemplation. At least half of the beard on Li Yuan's chin was shaved bald. The more he listened, the more excited he felt. Who would be willing to be suppressed by the Guanlongshi clan and the 5 clans and 7 Wangs? As for getting rid of these big clans and being able to truly witness all the imperial power of the Tang dynasty falling into the hands of the Li royal family, Li Yuan was also more and more excited at this time. He even urged him to give up the 10% shares of the paper mill. In the end, Zhang Feng sternly refused. "Old master, we have to keep some stock in our hands and keep it attractive. For example, this medicine, the paper mill, the forging workshop, the salt-making workshop, the rubber factory, and the textile factory. These are the foundation of whether we can destroy them in the future or not. If one of these falls into their hands, think about it, what attraction do we have? Humans are greedy like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. When they can't get what they want, they will try their best to get it. Now, these industries are all in a watertight situation. Once they tear a hole in it, think about the result. Although I still have a backup plan in the future, once the canal is opened, the initiative will not be in our hands. Now we want to give them meat to eat. They have it. When the time comes, it will be the meat in our hands. We have to think about how to give it out. Attraction. Li Yuan and the others could not help but feel shocked. They were very suspicious about what Zhang Feng was thinking about, but they also knew that this kid was really annoyed by Guanlong's people during this period of time. From the immortal ointment to the surveillance during the mid-autumn hunt, anyone would be scared, let alone this scheming kid. Well, everyone, I'm really tired these days. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first. When Zhang Feng saw that his children were deep in thought, he couldn't help but ask. He hurriedly got up and asked. But when he saw that no one responded, he ran away. Among people, especially that old man Li, it was impossible for Zhang Feng to guard against his cunning ways. He didn't dare to stay here any longer. If he did, then all the ink in his stomach would be taken away. How could he not know what these people wanted? They just wanted to ask him about the medical science, the operation, and the blood transfusion method. If Zhang Feng could explain it clearly, then he would not be here. He would have gone to the Imperial Academy of Medicine long ago. When Zhang Feng went out, his legs seemed to be filled with lead and could not be dragged. At the same time, in the depths of the palace, in Li Shimin's bedroom. At this time, a spy also showed everything that happened on the mountain today to Li Shimin. The ox saw the tiger's leg. It was done. This was, without a doubt, a great piece of news. At this time, Li Shimin could not help frowning slightly and sighing. Feng Zi was really careless this time. Chapter 1159. After Empress Zhangsun instructed Li Tai, she asked someone to send him back. Then she asked, "Second brother, what's wrong with Prince Zhang?" Li Shimin sighed and handed the secret letter to Empress Zhangsun. "Guanyin maid, read it and tell me what Feng Zi is thinking. The day before yesterday, he told me that he wanted to deal with these people. But this time, I don't understand. I don't know what he is thinking." Empress Zhangsun read the contents of the secret letter and couldn't help but feel surprised. According to young Master Zhang's style, coupled with the fact that these people have been targeting young Master Zhang recently, I feel that second brother shouldn't pay too much attention to the subtle matters. Why? Li Shimin didn't understand and asked. Empress Zhangsun smiled and said, "Second brother, don't you understand? Prince Zhang and the people of the Guanlong 5 surnames and 7 hopes were so enthusiastic at the beginning. If your majesty has too much contact with them, everyone will think that you and Prince Zhang are plotting something. What do you think will happen to the 5 surnames and 7 hopes? I think Prince Zhang did a good job. After all, only with a sense of mystery and temptation can the relationship between second brother and Prince Zhang fade. In addition, if second brother and Prince Zhang quarrel over this matter, it will be wonderful." Quarrel? Li Shimin was slightly stunned. But after a while, he suddenly understood. "I understand." Li Shimin laughed and said, "After tomorrow morning, I will go up the mountain again, you'd better not go anywhere. Tomorrow morning, there will be people talking about today's matter. Second brother, you only need to deny it." Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but smile. "Ha ha ha, Guanyin maid knows me best. However, it would be even better if Imperial Father could say a thing or two on the mountain." At night, news of Zhang Feng's life-prolonging blood transfusion method and his miraculous medical skills had already spread like wildfire in Cheng, and at night, it was even more miraculous. At this time, in Qing Yaojin's mansion, Zhangsun Wuji, Wei Jing, and the others were already sitting in a circle. They were just about to go to the palace to see the emperor, but the reply they got was that the emperor was angry and he didn't want to see anyone at this time. The emperor probably didn't know why they wanted to see the emperor. That was to say, what Zhang Feng did today made the emperor angry. At this time, they didn't understand what the emperor and Zhang were doing. They also didn't know what on earth to them. After all, the emperor seemed to know this matter. But now, it was so obvious, is the emperor really angry? That's not right. Everyone couldn't help but look serious again. Finally, Wei Zheng looked at Yuqi Gong and said, "Yuqi, you know the most during this time. Tell me, what's going on?" And Fengzi wouldn't do such a thing because of this matter. So, I think this is a trap set by the emperor and Fengzi. At this time, everyone was silent again. They weren't fools. Who was Zhang Feng? He was smart and cunning. Wouldn't he know the consequences of what he was doing now? No. He knew better than anyone else. So, it was too early to say anything now. They discussed for more than 2 hours, but just as it was about to end, little Gizi, wearing a big black robe and holding a gold medal, rushed into Qing Yaojin's living room. Little Gizi was wrapped up so tightly that no one could see his face, but everyone recognized the gold medal in his hand. They hurriedly got up, and little Gizi took off his hood and said with a smile, "Little Gizi greets the Guogongs." "Little Gizi, we're so familiar with each other. If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to be so polite." Wei Jing hurriedly smiled, but his smile was somewhat unreadable. Seeing this, little Gizi didn't beat around the bush. He took out a bamboo tube and handed it to Wei Jing, saying, "This is the emperor's order. So, the Guogong should do what you should do. It's best if you don't care about this matter. It's best if you make things difficult for that kid. Now, the emperor's order is to focus on preparing the forging workshop and the firearms. As for the rest, it's up to Prince Zhang to play by himself." Play by himself, everyone's expression froze. They didn't know what the emperor and Zhang Feng were up to. Even if you were beaten to death, you could tell that the emperor wanted Zhang Feng to solve it by himself, diverting everyone's attention from the front to the back. It seemed that this was the only way to explain the situation at this time. Wei Zheng and the others frowned and muttered for a while, then cupped their fists and said, "I'll have to trouble Gonggong to tell the emperor that we understand." Little Gizi heard this and nodded. The emperor actually understands everything. As for General Niu, I hope you can enlighten him. The emperor will reward the Chang and military camp tomorrow morning. He also wants to see this new training method. You know, as he spoke, little Gizi put the cloak on his head again and cupped his fists, saying, "Okay, I won't disturb you anymore to avoid too many eyes. I'll take my leave." Chapter 1160. Dong. The morning bell rang on time. Usually, at this time, no one in Chang'an City would have woken up or gone out. However, since the appearance of the football match and the morning exercise, no one in Chang'an City held a teapot for a walk. Instead, they went out for exercise in groups. Chang'an University also opened its doors. All the students opened their doors and ran around Chang'an City for exercise. The citizens naturally followed behind them and ran slowly. What was this? This was a trend. The Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan, as well as those high-ranking officials and dignitaries, were all trying their best to learn. Don't ask why. It was because this thing was created by Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng, godly Dr. Sun Simiao, and the 4 great scholars of Chang'an City had spent many years reading books. A genius like Zhang Feng had wasted many years in a small pub to create this thing. At this moment, White Deer Academy was basically considered to be a gathering place for those mystical things. Not to mention the rare building method, just the facilities of the academy, and the series of earth-shattering things that appeared, made it impossible to find any fault even if you wanted to. Tang and University was definitely the first place that White Deer College promoted these things in Tang and City. Although the public couldn't go to White Deer College, they only had to look at Tang and University to know what White Deer College had done during this period of time. In addition, the Directorate of Imperial College and the Hongwen Building were also present. Previously, everyone only knew that these two were not on good terms with Zhang Feng. However, ever since they saw this plaything at the autumn hunt, they were truly amazing. They all went to White Deer College in Shao Mountain to observe. That was not all. After watching a morning exercise, the libation lords of the two academies hurriedly drove the students of the academies down the mountain. Don't ask why. Because if these students were to stay here for another 2 hours, then the two academies, he would only be left with the awkward situation of being a teacher. After that, for some reason, the two of them actually begged Zhang Feng for the morning exercises, basketball, and even the football. Although this was said by the people of Tonghui Fang. However, in Chang and City, the people of Tonghui Lane had become the most dazzling neighborhood in Chang and City. They were also one of the most important channels for people to get to know more about the mountain. 121. 1, 2, 3, 4. 121. As the horn sounded at the door, the people of Chang, and who had been waiting at the door hurriedly followed behind the students and began to run. It was as if they were competing with each other. At first, Chang and University was the only big university. In the end, Imperial College and Hongwen Guan joined in. Good Lord, these two universities were even more aggressive than Chang and University. They ran from dawn to the last quarter of an hour before stopping. Their roars seemed to be announcing that this thing belonged to them. They even suppressed the roars of Chang and University. In the end, Zhang Shan of Eason Pastry, who was Zhang Feng's future father-in-law, and the old village chief of Tonghui Lane, raised their arms and called for the people of Tonghui Lane to join in. Naturally, the people of Hongwen Guan and Imperial College were defeated. However, they didn't lose their temper. If it were anyone else, these two universities would definitely curse them to death. However, one of them was Zhang Feng's father-in-law, and the other was Zhang Feng's neighbor. They could not afford to offend them. Every time they started from Chang and University, they would go around the Vermilion Bird Gate, and then to the illustrious Virtue Gate. After passing through the two cities, they would stop at the entrance of Zhang Feng's tavern for a while. This was the main point. In the end, they decided to start from the 16 royal cities and focus on Zhang Feng's tavern. Only then did Chang and City not fall into chaos. Moreover, this order came from the palace. Obviously, this had been tacitly approved by the emperor. What was this? If they did not F*King run, how could they face the emperor? How could they face the people of Chang and City? At this time, the officials who were attending the court did not dare to sit in the sedan chairs. Because they were flustered. Although those people who were running did not say anything, they still looked at their sedan chairs or horses and greeted them. They always felt that these people were greeting their ancestors. In the end, Qing Yao Jin had no choice but to take the initiative to pull Wei Zheng and the others to run to the court. This time, it was serious. How could they not go when the Duke had already gone to attend the imperial court? Could it be that they were more powerful than the Duke? So at this time, there was a spectacular scene of first-grade officials and ordinary people going out to run together every day with the morning bell as a signal. At this time, the foreign officials stationed in Chang and could not help but be completely dumbfounded. They stared at all this in Chang and mistakenly thought that the Tang Dynasty had entered the stage where all the people were soldiers. How could this be? How the F***ck could this be? As the information was sent out of the Tang Dynasty and into the hands of the monarchs of various countries, all the countries were shocked. And this Chang was the capital of the Tang Dynasty. How could the wind and grass here not let those who wanted to make achievements and climb up not see the light of hope? In particular, the Imperial College and the Hongwen Library were established in almost every state in the Tang Dynasty. This was an advantage for them. After all, no matter how powerful Chang and University and White Deer College were, they only had one library in Chang and City. At this time, if they took the lead to seize resources, the people would say that the things that did not belong to them were theirs. And this was one of their achievements. This was something that the emperor acquiesced to. Look at Chang and City. It was no longer as lazy as before. It made one's face flush with excitement. Later, because of the matter of basketball and football, the basic Kuju team changed their profession early. They worked harder than anyone else to learn Kuju. This was something that they would have to rely on in the future. In addition, Director Zhang Feng's promise was still there. If they won the championship of every season, they could get Zhang Feng's promise. Now, everything that Zhang Feng did was extremely enviable. As long as he revealed a little bit of it, it was enough for them to eat for a lifetime. At this time, as the running team slowly grew, three forces were basically formed in Chang and City. One was formed by the people spontaneously. The other was the students of the three academies. The other was the Kuju team and the ministers in the imperial court. This made Li Shimin and Li Yuan, who were standing on the Vermilion Bird Gate and watching, very surprised. Father, this. Will there be a problem? Li Shimin said with some shock. On the contrary, Li Yuan laughed and said, what problem can there be? Our Li family is known for practicing martial arts. Second young master, haven't you always been criticized for being born in the military? This move of Zhang Feng's has simply flattened this matter from the root. Li Shimin heard this and his eyes flashed. You mean? Let the whole people participate. Wrong. Do you still remember the teaching philosophy that Fengzi mentioned before? Li Shimin really forgot about this matter. At this time, he thought carefully and remembered. Are you talking about military management? Yes. Li Yuan smiled and stroked his beard. Now you should still remember that Zhang Feng's training method is still in progress in the army, right? Yesterday, after coming down from Mount Shao, this emperor went to take a look personally. The running team was exactly the same. Apart from the difference between the morning exercise and the military training, everything else was exactly the same. In this case, if everyone participated in it. Li Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Li Shimin. So what if the whole people are soldiers? This is for the good of the people. Let them always remember how our Tang dynasty started. What's wrong with this? Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but nod. I understand. Regarding the Li clan's imperial family being born and practicing martial arts, not only Li Yuan, it was also a huge mountain that Li Shimin was shouldering on his back. On top of that, the crime of murdering his brother and forcing the abdication was added. Right now, forget about the fact that Li Shimin had accomplished so many meritorious deeds, he was still a sinner. Although his father still forgave him, this was still a reason for those people in the court to target him. But now, this Zhang Feng really helped him a lot. This also made Li Shimin feel a little ashamed to face Zhang Feng. What, you can't help but tell that kid your identity? Li Yuan glanced at Li Shimin and said. Li Shimin didn't speak, but looked at the students and people roaring under the gate tower and nodded. Indeed, I always feel a little ashamed to face him like this. Li Yuan smiled. He laughed and said, it's up to you, but I think it's not the time now. Let's wait until these two big mountains are taken down from the Tang dynasty. After all, at this time, letting him stand out is not helping him, but harming him. What do you think? Okay, I'll wait here. It's time to go to court. Li Shimin opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he still couldn't say anything. He smacked his lips, made a gesture, and retreated down the city wall of Zhuke Gate. In the political announcement hall. At this time, many ministers were so tired that they were panting like oxen, squatting on the ground with flushed faces, or sitting on the court panting. But everyone's spirit was more than ever. At least, at this time, everyone's face was flushed, and they were full of energy. Although the group of civil officials were panting like windmills, they still gathered together to discuss something. They even looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and others from time to time. As for Zhang Sun Wuji, Qin Yao Jin, and the others, although they were a little out of breath, their statuses were still there after all. It was not good for them to say anything. They forced themselves to hold on, straightened their backs, and listened carefully to what the ministers were saying. This made the two old men, Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui, suffer. At this time, they wanted to sit down and rest, but their identities didn't match and it was inappropriate. But if they didn't sit down, their legs would be numb, not to mention how uncomfortable it was. At this time, little Gizi glanced at everyone indifferently. Everyone hurriedly got up from the ground, thinking that the emperor was going to court, but little Gizi said indifferently, "The emperor has decreed that from today on, all ministers will be rewarded with a futon, and you are allowed to kneel." This time, everyone couldn't help but boil up. This was simply a great favor bestowed by the heavens. Everyone hurriedly bowed, and the white jade in their hands couldn't stop trembling. "Thank you, Your Majesty." In the midst of everyone's cheers, the little eunuchs had already rushed out of the political announcement hall. An orderly took out a futon and placed it behind everyone's buttocks. The ministers looked at the futon and wanted to sit down. But without the emperor's permission, they didn't dare to. After the futon was distributed, little Gizi retreated to the side of the dragon throne and said loudly, "The emperor is here." Immediately, the ministers hurriedly tidied up their clothes, and then respectfully greeted. Li Shimin was very happy today, because just now, he could say that he saw these ministers still stride into the political announcement hall. Although this formation looked a little out of place, it was a good start. "Welcome, Your Majesty." "No need for formalities, please take a seat." Li Shimin waved his hand, but he didn't climb the 8-step stairway to heaven. Instead, he stood in front of everyone with his hands behind his back, and said with a smile, "Today's matter, I have seen it with my own eyes, I am very pleased." Everyone was surprised. Although most of them were unwilling, they couldn't help but be on tenterhooks when they heard that the emperor was secretly observing them. However, Li Shimin didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he smiled and waved his hand to signal everyone to sit down, but before he could speak, Wei Jing hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, this old minister thinks it's inappropriate." Li Shimin smiled faintly and said, "Let's hear it, what's inappropriate?" "Your Majesty, since ancient times, there has been a difference between the monarch and his ministers. Since the Han Dynasty, there has been a change in the etiquette system between the monarch and his ministers. From the beginning of the previous dynasty, the difference between the monarch and his ministers was even more prominent. This is very useful, at least it can highlight the etiquette between the monarch and his ministers." Ha ha ha. "Prime Minister Wei, you might as well say it in detail." Li Shimin waved his hand and said. Hearing this, Wei Jing hurriedly knelt and said, "Since ancient times, when has there been an emperor standing, but the hundreds of officials in the hall are sitting? This is not in accordance with the etiquette system. If Your Majesty just feels that the officials have worked hard today, I can understand, but..." Hearing this, a few of the officials also thought it over. Li Shimin stroked his beard, came to Wei Zhang's side, and sat cross-legged on the ground. The officials were so scared that they hurriedly knelt on the ground. "What about now? Now that I'm sitting, can you sit down?" Li Shimin looked at Wei Jing, who was kneeling in front of him with a smile, and personally helped him up, then said, "In the laws of the Tang Dynasty, is there anything I can't change? In my opinion, this thing is actually just a formality." Some people are wholeheartedly thinking about the Tang Dynasty, but I know what other people are thinking in their hearts. You all know. Therefore, Prime Minister Wei, you don't have to talk about the etiquette system anymore. I've made up my mind. While speaking, Li Shimin stood up with Wei Zhang's help and said, this so-called morning exercise and the 8th set of radio gymnastics were done very well. I've decided, I'll immediately issue an edict. Li Shimin waved his big sleeves, then walked up the 8-step stairway to heaven, and sat on the dragon throne, and said, I've decided, from today onwards, starting from the imperial palace, whether it's the harem or the Minister of Internal Affairs, as long as they're not on duty, everyone must do morning exercises when the morning bell rings. Otherwise, if you don't do morning exercises more than 3 times a month, your salary for that month will be deducted. Little Geezy, I'll leave this matter to you inside the imperial palace. As for outside the imperial palace, I've decided to leave it to the crown prince. Wei Zheng, Zhangsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong, and the others will assist in supervising the morning exercises of all the ministers. When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. This time, they're doomed. This old life will be completely lost. However, just as Wei Zheng and the others were about to receive the edict, a minister hurriedly stepped out and said, Your Majesty, Qin Yuben wants to submit a memorial. Li Shimin glanced at the person who came and snorted coldly, but he still waved his hand and said, Allow. During this time, His Highness the Crown Prince hasn't left the imperial court. At this time, the officials have already been talking about it. I hope Your Majesty can make a clear judgment. If this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid there will be chaos in the imperial court. Li Shimin smiled faintly, then what do you think? That minister hurriedly said, Your Majesty, this old subject has heard rumors before. Although the Crown Prince and the others are in charge of White Deer College and did do some things in the beginning, this is what the Crown Prince should do. However, if he doesn't come to the imperial court because of this small matter, isn't that a little, simply ridiculous? Official Wang, everyone has seen what White Deer College has done during this time. I'm sure Official Wang's house still has a large amount of white paper, right? If the Crown Prince wasn't in charge of this on the mountain alone, would you use such good white paper? Also, this braised meat. I heard that Official Wang's concubine wanted to eat braised meat, so she stole your family's food and gave it to your son. In the end, you broke her legs. Is this true? You. Qing Yaojin, you're maliciously slandering me. Qing Yaojin smiled coldly and ignored that person. Instead, he cupped his hands and said to Li Shimin, Your Majesty, the truth of this matter has been spread all over the streets of Chang'an. Moreover, all the officials present should know what kind of person this Wang Qinggong is. He is really a stingy person. You. Qing Yaojin, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Old man has no enmity with you. Why did you injure the old man so severely? Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this old subject. Hearing this, the group of old subjects who didn't want to speak couldn't sit still anymore. They all shouted angrily, Qing Yaojin, this is the imperial court. You're speaking such filthy words and publicly slandering an official. How should you be punished? Qing Yaojin, you're simply despicable. Do you think that people won't know you're running to White Deer College every day? Surname Qing, does old man have to report you to His Majesty for having ulterior motives? Li Shimin looked at the crowd indifferently and didn't say anything. When Qing Yaojin and the others saw this, they couldn't help but understand something. Qing Yaojin became even more furious. He put his hands on his hips and glared at the group of civil officials and started scolding them. The generals on Qing Yaojin's side also found a rare opportunity to angrily scold them for being fake refined. The morning exercises and running exercises were all from White Deer College. They had just heard them say that these exercises were good for the country and the people. Now, they were saying that these exercises were smelly dog shit. One of the generals couldn't help but jointly request, Your Majesty, these people simply don't put Your Majesty and the Crown Prince in their eyes. It's simply a waste of food to keep such people in the imperial court. We don't want to be associated with them. That's right, Your Majesty. These people clearly know about the Crown Prince's great achievements, but they just don't mention it. They're just grabbing onto the Crown Prince's weak points. What is their intention? The civil officials, especially Wang Qinggong, were secretly shocked. When he saw Li Shimin frowning and thinking about how to end this matter, he hurriedly scolded, Qing Yaojin, old man suspects that you did it on purpose. Qing Yaojin glared, Lao Tzu did it on purpose. What's wrong? Come and bite me. Chapter 1161. You! Qing Yaojin, how dare you! How dare you! How dare you act so presumptuously in the imperial court! The crowd roared angrily. Li Shimin coughed when he saw that the situation was getting out of his control. Wei Jing said coldly, What do you want to do in the imperial court? This old man thinks that the market is suitable for you. Why don't I ask Your Majesty to go to the market today? Hearing Wei Zhang's words, all of the officials fell silent. Only then did they notice Li Shimin's gloomy face. If you don't have enough, I'll give you 3 days and 3 nights to quarrel outside the hall. I'll take care of your meals. How about it? Li Shimin looked around indifferently and said, I allowed the Crown Prince to do this. I'm curious. Beloved Minister Wang, since you brought this matter up, I'd like to ask, how many of you think the Crown Prince did something inappropriate? Regarding this matter, the group of civil officials looked at each other. No one dared to say anything. What was there to say now? The emperor had given his permission. What else could they say? But Wang Qinggong was different. He was the first to jump out. Hearing the emperor's words, although he was trembling all over, he still gritted his teeth and said, Your Majesty, this old subject indeed lacked consideration at this time. However, Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this old subject regarding what General Qing said just now. Such a boor shouldn't cause a ruckus in this court. If this spreads out, what will the world think of the Tang Dynasty? Your Majesty, Qing Yaojin really didn't think it through. This is the imperial court. How can we allow him to make a fool of himself again and again? Such a boor should stay in the military camp forever. Qing Yaojin smiled coldly and did not say anything. He just clenched his fists until they made cracking sounds. Wei Jing couldn't help but frown. Official Wang, quit while you're ahead. The emperor will make a decision on this matter. Do you want to overstep your authority? Wang Qinggong was shocked. He glanced at Li Shimin, who was staring at him playfully, and felt a chill on his back. Beloved official Wang, do you mean that we should remove beloved official Qing from his position on the spot? Or do you want me to kill him? Then do you think that if I were to remove Minister Qing from his post and have you guard the Long Yu Road, do you think you would do better than him? Wang Qinggong's expression changed instantly. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground. I don't mean that, Your Majesty, then tell me, what do you want? Do you think the Crown Prince and I did something illegal on Shao Mountain? Li Shimin's anger. One of the Buddha's sleeves said, back then when there was a locust plague in Chang and I asked all of you, do you have a solution? When there was a food shortage, I still asked you all to donate some food in the political announcement hall. What did you all do? If official Cheng and the Crown Prince didn't find a genius among the people, if he didn't come up with a way to set up an academy on Shao Mountain to take in the refugees, if he didn't take out all his savings to buy 20,000 don of food, I ask you, do you still have a peaceful life today? At that time, don't you think the royal family of the Tang Dynasty is a disgrace? Li Shimin asked. Indeed, all the civil officials couldn't help but lower their heads. They knew clearly in their hearts. Your Majesty, we didn't think about this matter at that time, but we really don't have any money left. Wang Qinggong was still making a final struggle. However, Li Shimin had no desire to continue this matter. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Don't mention this matter again. If there's nothing else, the court is dismissed." At this moment, the imperial physician of the Imperial Institute of Medicine hurriedly came out and said, "Your Majesty, I have a report to report." "Your Majesty, do you still remember that General Niu's son, Captain Niu, broke his leg a few days ago?" Li Shimin nodded. "Didn't I ask the Imperial Institute of Medicine to go to the military camp for help? How is it? Is that boy okay now?" At this time, everyone knew the ins and outs of the matter. But now the emperor was pretending to be confused, so they didn't dare to say anything. Imperial physician Zhou glanced at Yu Qigong and Qin Yaojin and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive me for my incompetence." "Why?" Imperial physician Zhou pointed at Qin Yaojin and said, "That day, I led a group of people from the Imperial Institute of Medicine to the military camp under Your Majesty's order, but halfway there, I was stopped by Qin Yaojin. Moreover, I heard that Zhang Feng, the Chancellor of White Deer College, who won the Mid-Autumn Hunt, personally diagnosed him and came up with a blood-for-life treatment. I wanted to go to White Deer College to take a look. After all, Captain Niu and General Niu Jinda are the gods of war who protect our Tang Dynasty." However, when this old subject and the others reached the mountain gate, we were stopped by a group of old soldiers, who used to be Yu Qigong's subordinates. They said that without a letter from Zhang Feng, no one was allowed to enter the mountain. "Your Majesty, I have practiced medicine for dozens of years. When have I heard of such a treatment method? It's simply witchcraft." Li Shimin pretended to be surprised as he looked at Qin Yaojin and Yu Qigong and asked, "My two beloved subjects, is this true?" Yu Qigong heard and said, "Your Majesty, this is indeed true." Hearing this, all the officials couldn't help but exclaim again. "Oh my God!" Old Man thought that the blood-for-life treatment method was just a rumor. Now, it seems like, oh my God, witchcraft. This is definitely witchcraft. Seeing Li Shimin's expression turn cold again, little Gizi hurriedly flung his fly whisk and said, "Silence." That Wang Qinggong wanted to say something. He definitely wanted to say something. Moreover, they had already prepared for today's matter, from everything on Mount E to this witchcraft. They could definitely pull down Qin Yaojin and the other old bastards, but now it seemed to be impossible. After all, the pain from before had cleared up his muddle-headed mind. The emperor seemed to be aware of all of this. Otherwise, how could these people dare to cause trouble under the emperor's nose? The more Wang Qinggong thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Originally, he had been doing well in the Supreme Court. Usually, he would drink wine, take a walk with his birds, and when he had nothing to do, he would play with his concubines. His life had been quite peaceful. However, 3 days ago, he suddenly received a letter from the family head that he had not contacted for more than 10 years. Meanwhile, it was also at that time that he learned that most of these civil officials had received new reports from their families. These people were all like him. They were also relatives of the Wang clan, or branch families, and even people from the other 7 prominent families of the 5 families. Originally, they thought that this time, the Guanlong people and the Shandong landowning households would act with them. However, just now, he found that the Guanlong scum had actually slipped away. What did this mean? It meant that the rumor that they had been bribed by Zhang Feng was true. Although there were people in their families who were thinking about how to cooperate with Zhang Feng, these people didn't want to do anything. At the very least, they wanted to control Zhang Feng in their own hands. At this time, the 7 major families were in a mess. The family that had nothing to do with them had given them an order to put pressure on the emperor in court. This would help them ease the tension in their negotiations with Zhang Feng. They didn't care for things like braised meat, however, they had to get their hands on Zhang Feng's new diet formula. At this time, Wang Qinggong faintly felt that this matter wasn't so simple. However, he only had a vague feeling. After a short period of silence, Li Shimin knocked on the armrest of the dragon throne and slowly said, "We have heard of this matter. Although we do not believe in such things, we believe that there will be a day when the truth will come to light." "That's right, Minister Yuqi, tell us what happened afterwards." "We found out that you were in White Deer College these 2 days. Also, we heard that Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai seem to have gone to Shao Mountain and witnessed the process of Zhang Feng's medical practice with their own eyes." After all, he had never heard of such a rumor about Dr. Sun before. At this time, Imperial Dr. Zhou didn't know what was going on. All of this happened in an instant. Imperial Dr. Zhou hurriedly knelt and said, "Your Majesty, I was confused for a moment, but I did it for General Niu. Please have mercy, Your Majesty." Li Shimin took a deep look at Wang Qinggong again and said, "I have heard about this matter. General Niu didn't say anything. What are you talking about here? This is a family matter. You can ask General Niu personally when he returns." "Alright, this matter is like this. Don't mention this matter again. What do you think, Lord Wang?" Wang Qinggong was already drenched in cold sweat. How could he dare to say anything? Seeing that no one spoke, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Actually, this White Deer College's Zhang Feng has indeed disappointed me. Such a good thing is only used in such a small area. However, I feel that this brat did better than all of you combined. If only one of you could do what this brat did, would be able to sleep soundly every day." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be shocked. They didn't know what was wrong with the emperor. At this time, he was actually talking about Zhang Feng. Involuntarily, the civil officials calmed down. However, they didn't dare to speak carelessly. They only pricked up their ears to hear how the emperor was going to punish Zhang Feng. Chapter 1162. As for Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai, their faces couldn't help but turn pale. However, they were secretly delighted. At this moment, the emperor showed dissatisfaction towards Zhang Feng. That meant that the rumors about this kid and the emperor weren't true. Could it be that the rumors about the emperor and this kid being extremely close and hiding their identities were false? Everyone in the hall couldn't help but start to make small calculations. Qing Yaojin and the others couldn't help but be a little surprised at this time. If it wasn't for Xiao Gizi informing them in advance yesterday, they would have definitely thought that the emperor had taken the wrong medicine. But now it seemed that the emperor didn't take the medicine, and was very good. Ayaya, this kid is really something. Your Majesty, why don't this old official go to Barren Mountain tomorrow and teach him a lesson for you to vent your anger? This is such a good thing. Look at that braised meat. Even your Majesty hasn't eaten it yet. What is this? He doesn't respect you. This kind of person needs to be taught a lesson. Qing Yaojin loudly reprimanded Zhang Feng, angering him. In any case, he was saying it for these people to hear. As long as he saw that kid, it would be fine. Thinking of this, Zhang Sun Wuji also became angry. Yu Qigong even more so. Wei Jing also couldn't help but say a few words about Zhang Feng. The generals couldn't help but stare blankly at this scene. That's not it. What kind of situation is this? Isn't this kid a close friend of a few big shots in the military? At this time, they couldn't understand the situation and could only stare at the few people arguing. As for the civil officials, seeing that they were arguing fiercely, they also bitterly listed Zhang Feng's faults. However, how could they be a match for Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong? These two were people who could anger an enemy general to death on the battlefield without spitting a single curse word. They were existences who could kill enemies with a wave of their sword. How could they not win against these civil officials? When they heard that these people dared to scold Zhang Feng, they were embarrassed. They would only stop when that person's face turned white and his eyes turned white. As for Li Shimin, he pretended not to hear and quietly walked away. After Li Shimin left, the court became even more chaotic. It wasn't until 2 hours later that Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin finally left the political announcement hall with their arms around each other's shoulders, laughing heartily as if they were extremely carefree. As for Wei Zhang and the others, their faces were filled with shamelessness. There was no need to mention the group of civil officials behind them. For them to be able to stand up at this time was already a blessing from their ancestors. This was the first time that they realized that when these two idiots, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong, they could take someone's life. As soon as they left the Vermilion Bird Bridge, Wei Zhang and the others, as well as Qing Yaojin, stood on the bridge with smiles on their faces as they watched the crowd leave. Only Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the 3 ministers from the Ministry of Works and Rights were left behind. "Gentlemen, let's find a place to have a drink." Qing Yaojin's knuckles cracked as he looked at them and said. How could they not go at this time? They didn't want to experience the tragedy that Wang Qinggong and the others had just experienced. Moreover, the people here were all dukes and first-rank officials. How could they not go? They could only smile bitterly and cup their hands. They followed the palanquins, carriages, and horses into the nearest Chang'an hotel. The arrival of the ministers naturally made the manager of the Chang'an hotel grin from ear to ear. Although it could be said that this was a free meal, what was this? This was a shop front, a golden signboard. A few dukes, as well as the chancellor of the Imperial College's Hongwen Guan, and the others had come to visit. This would be a great deal of face if word got out. Moreover, the people in the Chang'an hotel all knew that these people were the ones behind the scenes. After sitting down in a luxurious private room on the 2nd floor of the hotel, Zhang Su and Wuji blocked Qing Yaojin and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, we are all old acquaintances. Let's not talk too much. Today, I invited you here to discuss something. However, there is still a distinguished guest, so please wait for a while." "Lord Zhangsun, you are really making us wait. How can we?" Before He Zhongjing could finish speaking, Yu Qigong said coldly, "I told you to sit down, so you better sit down properly." This time, He Zhongjing and the others were well behaved. They couldn't guess what these people wanted to do. At this time, they could only sit in a daze, uncomfortable as if they were sitting on pins and needles. However, they didn't dare to speak carelessly. After all, they were all sitting here. Although they didn't know why they were called here, they were usually very clear with each other. The reason they were called here was naturally because of Zhang Feng's matter. After all, they were smart people and naturally knew that some things that Zhang Feng couldn't handle were handled by them. However, although they weren't really enemies before, their relationship was naturally not good. Even during the mid-autumn hunt, they had the intention of making things difficult for this kid. Naturally, they felt a little guilty at this time. However, on second thought, they had already established a cooperative relationship with Zhang Feng. They were grasshoppers on the same rope as these dukes. What were they afraid of? Just as Lu Hongwen and the others were thinking about this, the door of the private room was suddenly pushed open again. Li Xiaogong slowly walked in. He Zhongjing and the others hurriedly jumped up and stood up instinctively. Li Xiaogong glanced at them and then looked at Wei Jing. Then, he waved his hand lightly, "Sit down. There's no need to be formal here. What we are talking about today is not a matter of the imperial court." Hearing this, He Zhongjing and the others sat down in surprise. After they sat down, Wei Jing cupped his hands and said, "Since everyone is here, Your Highness, do you want to speak? Or it's better for you to do it. After all, old man doesn't know about your business relationship."
I'm only here today as a witness, Li Xiaogong said as he drank his tea. Hearing this, He Zhongjing couldn't help but feel that it was as expected. It was really because of this matter. At this time, Wei Jing said slowly, "You've seen in the morning court today. The 7 distinguished families are covetously eyeing our business with Zhang Feng. Now that we're all cooperating with Zhang Feng, I know what you think. Just like what you said to Zhang Feng, we're all standing on the same line of interests, so we're friends. Since that's the case, you should understand why I called you here today, right?" How could He Zhongjing and the others not understand? He wanted them to express their stance. At this time, the Guanlong forces were finally ignored by the emperor. Although they weren't afraid of the emperor, once they really made a scene, both sides would suffer losses. Moreover, the 5 families and 7 great clans were eyeing them covetously. At this time, they didn't dare to act rashly. In addition, the people in the clans also knew about Zhang Feng. It was impossible for them to fall out with Zhang Feng at this time. In the face of absolute interests, they couldn't be casually abandoned by the clans. This was the cruelty of the big clans. In other words, at this time, even if they knew that the 5 families and 7 great clans were going to make trouble, they still had to stand with Zhang Feng. Seeing that they didn't speak. At this time, Wei Jing said in an incomparably dignified voice, "This morning, Old Man got the news that the iron sheet ship designed by Zhang Feng has been built in the Chang'an shipyard. However, the Chang'an shipyard again sent news that the 5 families and 7 great clans have suspended the sale of iron ore or raw iron." Chapter 1163. The few of them were puzzled. Why didn't the emperor mention this matter this morning? Why did he call them over to discuss such an important matter in private? Could this matter be related to their clans? Zhongjing and the others couldn't help but be even more afraid to speak. Seeing this, Wei Jing sighed and said, "Actually, Old Man hasn't reported this matter to the emperor yet. The main thing is to ask all of you after court if this matter has anything to do with you. Or rather, have you heard of this matter?" Wei Zhang's words were very clear. He meant to ask them if they knew about this matter or if it had anything to do with their clans. His meaning was very clear. At this moment, the people sitting here basically represented the imperial family and those related to Zhang Feng. They just wanted to inform each other. If they didn't inform each other in advance, they would also be implicated if something happened. Although the emperor was verbally reprimanding Zhang Feng, who knew if this was part of the emperor's scheme? Although this was all speculation, but this matter now, Zhongjing and the others exchanged glances and saw that Wei Jing and the others were also staring at them. They couldn't help but laugh bitterly and say, "Prime Minister Wei, we did have some misunderstandings with Brother Zhang Feng. But just like what Brother Zhang Feng said, there are no absolute enemies, only absolute benefits. This time our clans and Brother Zhang Feng have some business connections. If we take drastic measures at this time, wouldn't we be cutting off our own source of income? So, Prime Minister Wei, this matter has nothing to do with us." Hearing this, Wei Jing and the others heaved a deep sigh of relief. If the 5 families and 7 great families had acted together with Guanlong's people, this matter would really be troublesome. Now, it seemed that there was still a chance. Since that's the case, then it's fine. All of you are aware of the White Deer Academy's situation. Therefore, this old man wants to say that we're all bound together for good or ill. Old Wei, we're here to eat. Why do you sound so serious? Qing Yao Jin was also a quick-witted person. Seeing that the matter was settled, he slapped the table and said, Come. Let's eat. We can be considered one of us now. As long as we know that this matter wasn't caused by you guys, it's fine." After 3 rounds of drinks, Li Xiaogong said faintly, "Zhang Feng is a good kid. Although the old man hasn't been to the mountain, the old man is also prepared to live in the mountain for a period of time when he is free. Since Zhang Feng has taken out such sincerity to make friends with you, if the old man finds out that you have done such a treacherous thing, the old man will have something to use against you. Hearing this, He Zhongjing and the others' expressions changed. He hurriedly stood up and said, "Your Highness, what are you saying? Why would we cut off our own ties?" "Ah, Your Highness, you worry too much." Li Xiaogong didn't say anything, but still got up, clasped his fists, and slowly walked away. This time, the investigation had been made clear. As for Wei Zhang's so-called matter, in fact, the emperor had already known it. At this time, the purpose of his visit was actually to find out the background of these people. After all, in the court today, he didn't see these people express their opinions, so the emperor couldn't figure out the situation. As soon as Li Xiaogong left Chang'an Hotel, he hurried back to the imperial palace. Li Shimin had been waiting in the imperial study for a long time. As soon as he saw Li Xiaogong come in, he hurriedly asked, "How is it? The people of Guanlong are not involved, are they?" Li Xiaogong shook his head and said, "Replying to Your Majesty, according to this old minister's observation, the people of Guanlong shouldn't be involved in this matter. However, in the end, these people are also people who only care about profit. That brat Zhang Feng has already taken out such a tempting thing. How could they possibly know about this? Your Majesty, you're worrying too much." "Worry too much?" Li Shimin shook his head. The matter of iron ore was not only owned by the Wang clan of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. The people of Guanlong occupied most of the northern region. If Li Shimin believed that the people of Guanlong didn't have iron or veins, then he, Li Shimin, was really a fool. However, after hearing Li Xiaogong's words, Li Shimin really breathed a sigh of relief. The Mitsubishi bayonet that he was proud of would not last long because of the lack of iron, and this shipyard, although he said that he wanted to get rid of Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 clans in one fell swoop, he really didn't dare to do so at this time. Just dealing with one of them was likely to cause a great disturbance to the economy of the Tang Dynasty, let alone dealing with 2 of them. It was simply courting death, unless he had a suitable excuse. But, what could he do? But this time, the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans had finally taken action. Then, he might as well make this matter worse. Only in this way would he have a reason to take action. Thinking of this, Li Shimin said slowly, "Imperial uncle, this time I have to trouble you to come out of the mountain." Chapter 1164. 2 hours later. The gate of the Chang'an shipyard, which had always been mysterious and forbidden from approaching, slowly opened. The Chang'an shipyard was located in the Longzhou Canal between the Daming Palace and Jiaqing. It went up to the Longzhou Mountain and down to the Wei River. At this moment, the sound of firecrackers shook the sky. All the people were shocked to discover a big thing. The Chang'an shipyard, which had been closed for several months, was actually open. After a moment of silence, everyone rushed towards the direction of the Chang'an shipyard. They wanted to see what would happen in the Chang'an shipyard today. After all, such a thing had never happened before. However, before the crowd could get close, they saw a black thing, which seemed to be a lump of iron, slowly sailing toward the outside of the shipyard with the wind. "Oh my God! This is a ship, an iron ship." Following a blacksmith's exclamation, everyone then realized that the pitch-black thing was actually covered with a layer of unknown thickness of iron. This time, it was incredible. Everyone was in an uproar. It was not that they had not seen the ships of the Tang Dynasty, as well as the ships before, but this lump of iron really surprised them. Some of the bolder people couldn't help but head towards the shipyard frantically. This time, the troops stationed at the shipyard didn't chase them away like they usually did.
This time, everyone became even bolder. In fact, some merchants even abandoned their own stalls and followed the crowd to watch the show. This time, it was really lively. The ship slowly sailed from the East Longsho Canal to Tunghuimen, and then to Chunming Gate, which was near the East Market. At this time, the crowd of onlookers increased. Firecrackers were set off one after another on the ship as if they were free. The red cloth on the metal ship was also covered with layer after layer. At this time, as the sound of the firecrackers spread farther and farther in the north wind, more than half of the people in Chang'an City could hear the deafening sound. More and more people gathered, to the point that there was already a dense crowd outside the Spring Bright Gate. Everyone was either at the city gate or outside the city gate, staring intently at the big ship in the river. Even the eyes of the city guard stationed on the city walls were about to pop out. At this moment, the iron ship slowly came to a stop in the Dragonhead Canal of the Spring Bright Gate. As the iron ship slowly came to a stop, a huge wave suddenly appeared on the originally calm water surface, smashing towards the onlookers. Along with a burst of exclamations. Only then did everyone recover from their shock. Seeing no movement from the ship, everyone gathered their courage and stepped forward to take a closer look. The Dragonhead Canal was originally used as a moat, and the river was at least 10 feet wide. However, at this time, it could only fit one iron ship. Moreover, as the iron ship slowly approached the shore, the water level had already increased by a large amount. The commoners also followed the boat to the shore. When they saw that the people on the boat did not move, they slowly went forward. With this look, the crowd could not help but burst into another burst of exclamations. The entire body of the ship was covered with thick pieces of iron, which were at least 10 feet in size, riveted to the body of the ship with rivets. Moreover, in the gaps, no one knew what was stuffed. At this moment, everyone looked up and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The entire ship is made of iron. Oh my God, how much iron will be wasted? Is this going to start a war? Along with the doubts, a burst of horse hooves sounded behind the crowd. The crowd did not think much and hurriedly stepped forward, hurriedly opening a path. A group of officials from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Personnel hurriedly appeared at the Spring Bright Gate. At this time, the crowd did not even sit in sedan chairs, but instead, rode on horses. As the crowd approached, the crowd could not help but open their mouths wide. Looking at the lump of iron in front of them, all the officials could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. On the ship, the Chang'an Navy Commander Zhang Liang's armor was polished until it shone brightly. He even got a red cloak tied around his neck. As the north wind blew, it was very beautiful. Lord I have been ordered to supervise the construction of the iron ship. Today, I am here to report the completion of my task. Please come up and inspect it. At this time, Zhang Liang's voice was also louder. It was as if he wanted everyone present to hear about his great achievements. And this voice was really effective. Once again, it won waves of exclamations from the crowd. He Zhongjing and the others could not wait any longer. After exchanging pleasantries with Zhang Liang, they hurriedly boarded the iron ship. Once they boarded the iron ship, He Zhongjing and the others felt shocked. The entire ship was almost made of iron. Even the 3 incomparably huge masts on the ship, he dared to say that they were 100% pure iron. He Zhongjing had indeed heard that the people in this shipyard were building a new type of ship. Every month, they would directly transport iron ore from the Ministry of Works. The shipyard even had the authority to directly purchase iron ore from the outside. With such a huge number, they made this. Chapter 1165. Things were still fermenting. Chang'an was not big, but if Fandong City made a fart, people in Shi City would know in less than 2 hours. What was more, the shipyard made this iron lump in such a high-profile way today? What was it going to do? No one knew. But it just added a topic for people to talk about after dinner. It was rumored that this thing was designed by the dean of White Deer College. Once this thing appeared, it meant that the waterway trade of the Tang Dynasty had officially entered the golden period of navigation. For those businessmen, this was a heaven-sent opportunity. They only needed to build a business transit area at Hukou Waterfall. Then, they could set off from Chang and to go to Jiangnan, Zhenla, or other countries. It was at least twice as fast as traveling by land. This made those businessmen even more excited. Once the iron ship appeared, although they certainly could not afford it, it meant that the national strength of the Tang Dynasty had skyrocketed again. In this way, who dared to compete with the navy of the Tang Dynasty on the waterway? Not to mention the small boats of other countries, even the current five-tooth warship seemed to be unable to withstand the collision of this ship. Although the whole ship was still designed according to the model of the five-tooth warship, the sturdiness of the bow of the hull was more prominent. The collision spike in front of the ship was 20 feet long, and it was protruding from the bow of the ship, like an axe or a sharp sword out of the sheath. Not to mention colliding with it, just looking at it would make people shudder. The bow and the stern of the ship were shaped like an axe, just like a charging boat. However, this greatly increased the wind resistance of the ship. Of course, these people did not know about the wind resistance. Even Zhang Liang and Li Shimin had only seen it according to the explanation in Zhang Feng's blueprint. Li Shimin naturally came. At this time, Su Zi, surrounded by a group of eunuchs and ministers, slowly boarded the iron ship. Looking at the completely new design inside and outside the ship, he could not help but click his tongue in amazement. His bright back straightened even more. "Your Majesty, take a look. This is the crew's warehouse. It's 150 m long. Its draft has long surpassed that of the previous five-tooth battleships. What's more, the crew's warehouse is at the bottom of the ship. Each ship is equipped with 15 crew's warehouses. Each crew's warehouse is equipped with over 100 oars and lookouts. That's..." Zhang Liang had never thought that one day, he would be able to bring the emperor to this ship and tell him all kinds of stories on the ship. After the final introduction, they entered the command cabin and the rest cabin of the ship, which was also known as the crew's canteen. On the side of the cafeteria, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask in confusion, there seems to be a place between these two places. "You didn't tell me about it, right?" Hearing this, Zhang Liang couldn't help but be speechless. "Your Majesty, this is also the place this general wanted to talk about. This iron ship, everything can be understood. It was built according to Prince Zhang's blueprint. However, there is a place this general does not know what it is used for." As he spoke, Zhang Liang found a large door between the resting cabin and the lower level. He opened the door and saw an enormous, oval-shaped space that was completely empty. It was connected from the top of the ship to the lowest level of the ship's draft cabin. Standing here, one could even hear the gurgling sounds of the Wei River flowing cheerfully. Not only was Li Shimin confused, but Wei Zhang and the others who followed Li Shimin were also confused. They didn't know what Zhang Feng had left behind this place for. Li Shimin turned around and looked at them. "We remember this kid bragging to us before that this ship didn't have a propulsion system. Do you still remember?" When Li Shimin said this, Zhang Sun Wuji's heart trembled. He couldn't help but ask, could it be that this place is going to install the steam engine that the kid mentioned? When Zhang Sun Wuji said this, Li Shimin suddenly understood. However, he also understood the situation on the mountain. If he wanted to study it, he could only wait until everything on the mountain was settled. He then asked, "General Zhang, can this ship be driven?" "Yes, but in terms of speed, it is the same as a normal ship. It isn't at the terrifying level that Prince Zhang said it could travel millions of li in a day." Of course, it wasn't at that level. Li Shimin knew this. After all, the steam engine hadn't been created yet. This ship could only reach its limit. Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but sigh deeply. How much iron is left in the shipyard now? How many ships are still under construction? When Li Shimin asked this question, Zhang Liang's face couldn't help but turn bitter. Replying to the emperor, the iron that can be used in the shipyard has been smelted. However, at present, there is only enough iron for half a ship. Basically, the shipyard has no iron at this time. The original iron source was directly announced to be out of stock yesterday morning. Basically, in 3 days, the shipyard will have to stop work. When Li Shimin heard this, his face turned cold. The people next to him also saw the anger in Li Shimin's eyes. They couldn't help but feel nervous. Looking at the empty hole, Li Shimin's eyes suddenly burst out with killing intent. It's time to go to the mountain. These 7 clans are really too much. Do they really think that we are easy to bully? Chapter 1166. The incident at the shipyard didn't spread. However, after Li Shimin left the ship, he went straight to Shao Mountain. However, this still caused this matter to be in hot water. Most importantly, the people from the 5 families and 7 clans were still quietly waiting for something. They seemed to be waiting to see how Li Shimin would deal with this matter. But in the end, they heard a rumor in the crowd. It seemed that there was a problem with the ship's construction and the emperor was angry. This time, the spies from the 5 surnames and 7 clans were also confused. They didn't know what was going on, but they still spread the news immediately. As for the shrewd people in the crowd who knew these people, they immediately realized a problem. Why did the metal disappear for no reason? On the other side, when Wei Zheng and the others were about to reach the mountain, they hurriedly returned to Chang and with Li Shimin's orders. Li Shimin and little Gizi went to White Deer College alone. Li Shimin hadn't been to White Deer College for a long time. The last time he came, it was at night and he didn't notice the situation in the college. At this time, when he went up the mountain, he saw that the 2 stones at the gate had been engraved with gold powder. In the middle of the gate, there was a statue of an old man that Li Shimin didn't recognize. He had a big beard and a pair of sunglasses that Zhang Feng had given to Li Qingqian. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask in confusion, who is this person? Little Gizi was worried for a long time, but he still didn't know what was going on. He hurriedly went up to the only entrance of the gate and asked around. Then, he said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, they don't know either. I heard that he is Prince Zhang's teacher. Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but look at him with interest. This statue's hair was actually not the same hairstyle as it was now. Instead, it was short and combed in the middle. Although it looked a little awkward, it had its own unique style. The thing over his eyes set off his face value, which was not considered fat. Although he looked a little ordinary, there was also a unique charm to him. On his body, he was wearing something that couldn't be described. It looked like a cloak, but it didn't look like one. The clothing was also very strange. Li Shimin didn't know which country this clothing came from. Then, he remembered that Zhang Feng had said that his teacher had traveled around the world. Li Shimin was even more convinced. Or else, how could Zhang Feng know so much at such a young age? Thinking of this, Li Shimin's eyes were slightly burning. He bowed to the statue, then slowly walked up the mountain with his hands behind his back. In the mountain, the places where the houses and shacks were built before had been planted with green holly trees. On the cement ground on the mountain path, there were also craftsmen laying something on it. Although it smelled a little pungent and it was a little sticky when stepping on it, it was very comfortable. This undoubtedly brought another surprise to Li Shimin. Li Shimin couldn't help but make a small calculation in his heart. Thinking of the cement ground on this abandoned mountain and the palace, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a little jealous. He didn't use this thing, but this kid actually wasted it here. This was all money. Thinking of this, Li Shimin walked up the mountain faster. On the road, Gong Ziyuan saw Li Shimin early. He wanted to kneel down and greet him, but he didn't dare. He could only clasp his fish to Li Shimin in return. Li Shimin smiled and pointed to the black thing on the ground and asked, "What is this thing?" "This is something we got from Niu Pai Huang's rubber factory. The director said that we should use it on the roads. Now, the roads on the mountain are all paved with it. At first, it smells a little bad, but after this thing dries, it's fine. It's very soft. The director calls this thing asphalt, asphalt." Li Shimin heard a new term again. Just when Li Shimin wanted to ask Gong Ziyuan to send someone to make this thing in his palace, he happened to hear Zhang Feng's voice. "Hey, what a rare guest. Lao Li, why are you here?" When Li Shimin heard that, he laughed bitterly and said, "Good lad, where did you go this time? What is this thing on the ground?" Li Shimin had a lot to say, but this wasn't the place to talk. He put his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and walked up the mountain. As they walked, Zhang Feng kept bragging to Li Shimin about how he wanted to make the mountain look like. When Li Shimin sat down in Zhang Feng's cabin, it was already half an hour later. At this time, Shiva didn't wait for Zhang Feng to speak. He took the initiative to serve tea and stood to the side. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and said, "Feng, I have a good thing and a bad thing to say. Which one do you want to hear?" "The bad thing." Chapter 1167. Zhang Feng didn't even think about it. Li Shimin didn't know what to say after hearing Zhang Feng's words. He smacked his lips and said, "The bad thing is, there's no iron." "There's no iron." Zhang Feng paused for a moment, but he didn't think much about it and asked again, "What's the good thing?" While talking, Zhang Feng gave Li Shimin and Shiva a cigarette and asked Shiva to sit down. After lighting the cigarette, Li Shimin said, "The good thing is, there's news from the shipyard. The iron ship is ready according to your request." "Really?" Zhang Feng was a little excited. But after thinking about it, he felt that something was wrong. Damn it. The ship was made, but there's no iron. "Lao Li, tell me, isn't there a lot of iron? Why is there no iron?" Seeing that Zhang Feng finally realized the big problem, Li Shimin smiled bitterly and said, "Do you still remember what happened in Lantian? When you were in Lantian, didn't you see someone? I suspect that he's from the Wang clan. In addition, I heard from Lord Zhangsun that in today's morning court, those people from the Wang clan wanted to gang up on you, but later those dukes and the emperor protected you, but the emperor was also very dissatisfied with you because of this." Shiva couldn't help but frown. Zhang Feng's face was also a little gloomy. "Damn it, Lao Tzu didn't mess with you, but you're messing with me first." At this time, Li Shimin didn't need to say anything. These mines were basically in the hands of the Wang clan in Taiyuan. As for the other families, although they also had mines, according to historical records, only the Wang clan had the most iron. Although there were many coal mines in Shaanxi, they occupied more than half of the iron mines in the Tang Dynasty. The shipyard had no iron. What did that mean? Zhang Feng saw the Chang and shipyard from afar when he was strolling around. He knew the rules of that place. At that time, there was an endless stream of merchants transporting coal, charcoal, and iron ore from morning till night. Now that there was no iron, there could only be one reason. Someone had destroyed this thing at the source. Otherwise, in this world, other than the Wang clan, there were other places that had iron. However, this was the only place that could make a shipyard run out of iron. Besides, not only the shipyard, but the smelter on the mountain also seemed to be unable to hold on for much longer. Once he ran out of iron, everything that Zhang Feng had planned to do in the future, including his plan to increase his reputation, would go down the drain. I have something to say. Right at this moment, Shiva said softly in a timid voice. Zhang Feng and Li Shimin looked at Shiva at the same time. This fellow's identity was not simple. Now that he could speak, could it be that this kid, if you have something to say, then say it? Could it be that you want to transport iron ore from Jinla to Chang'an? Zhang Feng instantly thought of this point. But then he saw Shiva nod. Zhang Feng frowned slightly and looked at Li Shimin. Lao Li, do you think it's feasible? Li Shimin frowned slightly. It's feasible, but from Jinla, we have to pass through the places of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. It's inevitable that there will be some mistakes. This is not a solution. Then you mean, almost at the same time, Li Shimin and Zhang Feng asked at the same time. The next moment, the two said again, or do we have to deal with the threat of the 5 surnames and 7 clans? Shiva was dumbfounded. How could these two think and say the same thing? Li Shimin nodded slightly. It seems that we have the same idea. This time it's not Guanlong's people. Although Guanlong is also a big clan, after all these years, coupled with Emperor Yang of Sui's targeting, they can no longer stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. Coupled with the trade with them, although they won't do anything to us, you can't expect them to help you in this matter. Yes, we have to think of a foolproof plan. Li Shimin had a headache. The sphere of influence of the 5 surnames and 7 clans was too large. The most important thing was that these people were of the same breadth and branch. If one of them had a problem, the other 6 would definitely not ignore it. Li Shimin couldn't help but think of a way, and that was the method that Zhang Feng had used to deal with Guanlong. He asked, why don't we use Guanlong's method on them? Hearing this, Zhang Feng smiled somewhat speechlessly. Do you want to let the tiger return to the mountain, or do you want to draw fire to yourself? I did think about it last time. Did you think that my plan last time was really to deal with Guanlong? Are they worthy? Li Shimin was stunned. Shiva was also stunned. Was it not? Zhang Feng had a headache as he smoked. Last time, my main target was still the Wang clan of Taiyuan. As long as I took him down, then the mineral resources of the world would basically be in my hands. However, these guys simply hid too well. No matter what I did, they still refused to show up. So, for the time being, Guanlong's people benefited. The plan that Zhang Feng had formulated previously was indeed to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 clans. However, these guys were simply monkeys to the extreme and were extremely united. They were basically in an invulnerable state. Now, to deal with them, it was really a little difficult. Zhang Feng was silent. Li Shimin and Shiva saw Zhang Feng's expression and didn't say anything. They could only wait silently. At this time, they could only see if Zhang Feng had a solution. If even Zhang Feng didn't have a solution, then Li Shimin could only use that method. Although he really didn't want to use it, but these 5 surnames and 7 clans really needed to be taught a lesson. Chapter 1168. I see. After a moment of silence, Zhang Feng muttered, things are a little tricky, but it's not impossible. Li Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard that. Tell me about it. Zhang Feng smiled slyly. Actually, it's still the same old way. Attack with public opinion. Didn't he stop the iron mines? Believe it or not, he'll stop the supply of coal next. In that case, seeing that it's already the autumn planting season, the people need iron farming tools more urgently than us. The 5 families and 7 major clans have thought of a way to remove the firewood from under the cauldron, but this is also our chance. You're saying, Li Shimin instantly thought of Zhang Feng's promotion of the bone-strengthening powder and deep-fried locusts in Chang'an City. However, at this time, Zhang Feng's words made Li Shimin feel that if they spread the rumors at this time, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Not only did he offend Zhang Feng and himself this time, but he also directly disregarded the lives of the people. Would the people agree? However, Li Shimin also knew that this was almost impossible. He couldn't help but ask, "This is a good idea, but how can we make the people really like what we think? Do you still need to think about it? Have you ever heard of a saying, water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it?" After saying that, Zhang Feng slapped his forehead and said, "I forgot, this is what the current emperor said. You probably haven't heard it, water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it." Li Shimin's mind was a little shaken. He really didn't know that he had said this sentence, and he didn't know where this kid heard it from. However, this sentence seemed to be very true. However, this wasn't the time to talk about this. Li Shimin shook his mind and hurriedly asked, "Then tell me, how are you going to deal with those people? Do we still need to deal with the people?" Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin deeply. Seeing that Li Shimin really didn't understand, he slowly said, "In fact, I just said that water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it. The 5 families and 7 major clans are the boat, and the people are the water. Do you think their behavior this time has endangered the lives of the people? The people of the Tang Dynasty in the south suffered floods this year, the drought in the north, plus the locust plague and food shortage. I believe that there aren't many people in the Tang Dynasty who have surplus food. There aren't many people who can survive until next year." Li Shimin seemed to understand something. He nodded and motioned for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng then said, "Actually, this matter is very easy to deal with. Right now, all the people have placed their hopes on this autumn planting. Food is their lifeblood. Now that there are people who want to kill them, do you think the people still need us to incite them? If killing people isn't illegal, I think that as long as we spread the news, they will be killed by countless people in an instant." Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. Shiva also seemed to understand something. At this time, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Teacher, you mean, we just need to spread the news?" Zhang Feng looked at Shiva with some admiration and said, "That's right. Continue to talk about your thoughts. After all, you are also a prince. I also want to see how much you have learned from me." Hearing this, Li Shimin slightly raised his eyebrows. After all, this person was not from the Tang Dynasty. Although he reluctantly let him come, he didn't want him to learn too much. This person was not from the Tang Dynasty. In addition, which one of the things Zhang Feng came up with wasn't beneficial to the country and the people? This, Li Shimin couldn't help but pricked up his ears. He wanted to hear what this Prince Shinla Shiva had learned. Shiva was a little embarrassed, but when he saw that Li Shimin's expression didn't change, he breathed a sigh of relief. This student heard from Tai Nyo and the others a few times about how teacher dealt with Tubo, as well as your enthusiasm for the Guanlong aristocrats this time, and summed it up myself. It's like this. This student believes that there is indeed no way to deal with such a monolithic entity. However, if we were to break through from the weakest point, this student believes that we can make use of public opinion as the main attack. Then, we can send people to find the iron ore. In this way, wouldn't the Tang Dynasty be able to overcome this crisis in an instant? That's right. Zhang Feng patted Shiva's shoulder and praised, "Although what you said is a little one-sided and perfunctory, this is undoubtedly the best way. Didn't the 5 families and 7 clans claim to have all the mineral veins in the world? Didn't they claim that as long as there are mineral veins in the world, there is nothing they can't find? But this coal mine in Lantian, how did we find it? What does this mean? It means that the Taiyuan Wang clan is not invincible. This iron ore, if it was someone else, they really wouldn't be able to find it." Seeing Zhang Feng smiling so cheekily at this time, Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. "Kid, don't tell me you have another idea." "Yes." Zhang Feng smiled confidently. He took a puff of his cigarette and said, "What is the place above Longshou Mountain called?" Zhang Feng was really an idiot about the names of places in the Tang Dynasty. Even though he had seen many maps, he still didn't know about many places. Above Longshou Mountain was Luochuan in northern Shaanxi, but this place didn't seem to be called Luochuan. He couldn't say that it was Luochuan in northern Shaanxi, could he? It would be strange if he wasn't treated as a freak. Li Shimin was a little confused, but he still said, "That place is called Longshou Mountain." "What's wrong?" "That's right." Zhang Feng slammed the table and said excitedly, "Send people to look in that direction." "Last night, I was watching the stars and found that there was a strange light flashing in that place. Come on." Li Shimin was speechless and interrupted Zhang Feng. He said with a headache, "Don't brag. Are you sure there is an iron ore there?" Chapter 1169. Zhang Feng naturally knew that what he said was not true. However, he did not know where the iron mine was. He only heard that there was a super large iron mine in Luochuan. Zhang Feng patted his chest and said, "If there isn't, we'll do whatever you say." "Okay, that's enough. Gizi, did you hear that? Send people to Longshou Mountain to find it immediately." "Yes." Li Shimin was not careless. He made a prompt decision to transfer people out. If there really was an iron mine. If there was an iron mine above and a coal mine below, the 5 families and 7 major clans would not be able to suppress the military enterprises of the Tang Dynasty and the production and living of the people. This was really good news for Li Shimin. He could not help but be excited. Chouzi City was still waiting for military supplies. Although he had secretly gathered hundreds of skilled blacksmiths and smelters in the Tang Dynasty, he still could not replace the triangular bayonets for all the soldiers. Not to mention, the firearms that Zhang Feng mentioned were still in the process of developing the parts. Even if he wanted to deal with the 5 families and 7 major clans, he had to have something to take out. At the very least, with the iron mine and coal mine, he would have a strong army of his own. This was the most important thing. With military power in his hands, who would Li Shimin be afraid of? However, the most frightening thing was still the problem of resources. Once there was a shortage of iron, the forging workshop on the mountain would stop working for a day. This would be a huge loss. He could not afford to lose it. He could not afford to wait. He could not afford to wait. In addition, the situation on Jin La's side and Tubo's side could not be relaxed. Once the news that the 5 families and 7 major clans had blocked the iron mine of the Tang Dynasty spread, then, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking of this, Li Shimin could not help but ask worriedly, "Fengzi, doesn't that mean that the firearms, the forging workshop on the mountain will also go on strike?" "It can't be, right?" Zhang Feng wasn't sure. "I remember that I went there yesterday and saw that there was a lot of iron ore and scrap iron. It shouldn't stop production. You can rest assured about that. However, where is the sword you promised to give me, Yang Guang's personal sword?" When Li Shimin said this, Zhang Feng remembered this matter again and asked. Li Shimin was stunned. Only then did he remember this matter. He laughed awkwardly and said, "I'm sorry. Next time, I won't wait for you to open the academy. How about I personally send you up the mountain? We should be nearing the Great Pass by now." Zhang Feng was speechless. But he didn't force it. Forget it, forget it. Let's not talk about it." Li Shimin hurriedly asked, "You should be aware of the current situation. Chapter 1170. As soon as Zhang Feng left the hut, he rushed to the workshop to check on the situation. If what Old Li said was true, then this matter was really serious. This was not only because of the iron ore, but also because of the firearms. He did not expect that the people of the 5 surnames and 7 nobles would calculate the times so viciously. They were so impatient that they wanted to make a move. Could it be that they had predicted what would happen in the future and deliberately waited for this moment to deal with him? Now was not the time to think about this. After pondering for a while, Zhang Feng decided to personally supervise the production of the firearms. After all, if he really went against the 5 surnames and 7 expectations, then the firearms would be his biggest barrier. Only when he had a sense of security in his own hands would he be truly safe. Anything brought by others would be nonsense. At the thought of this, Zhang Feng no longer hesitated and hurried to the smithing workshop. He even greeted everyone along the way vaguely, thus fooling them. The amount of steel consumed on the mountain was uncountable. He was not sure how much iron and steel was left on the mountain. If there was no more, then this time, it would be very interesting. He had to quickly change his plan. If there was, then the matter of the 5 surnames and 7 expectations could be delayed. After all, Zhang Feng did not expect to be shameless with the 5 surnames and 7 expectations so soon. Once they were shameless, with the 5 surnames and 7 expectations, who did not even put Li Shimin in their eyes, care about a small shrimp like him. At this time, the workshop had expanded by at least 10 times from its original location at the edge of the cliff. The edge of the cliff had become the core area of the workshop. Usually, there would be countless sturdy guards patrolling back and forth. The number of people in the forging workshop had also increased from 30 top-notch blacksmiths captured from the western region to about 70 people. Half of these people were the original people, while the other half were top-notch blacksmiths that Old Li had found at the foot of the mountain. They specialized in refining steel. As for those people before him, they were researching firearms and manufacturing-related technologies. Now that Arkanon and Mokito had more time, they were fully immersed in the study of the principles of firearms. After all, the situation in the north was tense. As for Lao Li's businesses, he didn't know how long they would last. These were all money. If it was really Lao Li's alone, then Zhang Feng wouldn't hesitate to ask him to give it up. These guns could be used for anything. But now, the academy needed money everywhere, and some of these industries belonged to him. Most importantly, once Chotzi City was stabilized, it would be very important for trade. It was the key channel to the Middle East. This was the reason why Zhang Feng insisted on analyzing that if they really wanted to rescue Zhenla, they would have to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. After all, this Chotzi was the key to the problem. It didn't matter if the Turks were an army or if they had obtained any benefits from Tubo and India. Once they returned to the Turks, Chotzi would be their greatest obstacle. They would take this city. He didn't expect Brother Lao Li to really tell this to Lord Zhongsun, although Zhang Feng absolutely believed that he could think of this point. How could Li Shimin, who had the 4 war gods, not think of this point? However, Zhang Feng could not help but suspect that the emperor had planted a spy by his side because of the repeated coincidences with his own ideas. But now wasn't the time to think about this. By the time Zhang Fengyi raised his head, the workshop had already entered his sight. At the entrance of the workshop was a huge boulder. Arkanon was squatting on the boulder and smoking with a frown on his face. The guard at the entrance of the forge was the first to notice Zhang Feng. He immediately exclaimed, "Isn't this the dean? The dean is here. Everyone come out." Following this roar, everyone suddenly turned to look at the entrance of the mountain, at the white-clothed youth who had hurriedly arrived. If this person wasn't Zhang Feng, who else could it be? Arkanon also noticed Zhang Feng from this roar. He hurriedly stood up and bowed, "Dean." At this moment, he was already full of admiration for Zhang Feng. The internal structure of the godly weapon, which had dozens of components, could actually be assembled into a gun that could be picked up with one hand. How miraculous was this? At this moment, it wasn't just Arkanon. Everyone in the forge was also full of admiration for Zhang Feng. When everyone heard the commotion, no matter how busy they were, they had to stop and hurry to Zhang Feng's side to greet Zhang Feng along with Arcanon. Greetings, Dean. It was rumored that even a crippled old soldier was able to obtain a beautiful woman to serve in White Deer Academy. Who wouldn't desire such a position? Who did not want to stay on the mountain? Everyone wanted to stay. Zhang Feng did not know what they were thinking, nor did he have the mood to know. Even if he knew, what could he say? As a person who had made great contributions to the country, he would do whatever he could to help. This was a piece of cake for him. Moreover, he could get a few more helpers. That was all. At this time, on a remote mountain outside the workshop, Zhang Feng, Mokito, and Arcanon were sitting behind a large rock that was blown away by the wind. Zhang Feng asked, "Let me ask you too, how many iron ores are left in the forge? Or are you talking about scrap iron?" Mokito didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but since Zhang Feng asked, he didn't dare to not answer. He quickly replied, "Dean, there are still about 100,000 stones of iron on the mountain. As for scrap iron, there should be about 50,000 stones." Mokito didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but since Zhang Feng asked, he didn't dare to not answer. How long can it last? Hearing this, Mokito and Algernon were stunned. Didn't they ship iron ores to the mountain every day? Although the amount delivered these 2 days was a bit small, the two of them didn't care. At this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, the two of them couldn't help but have some doubts in their hearts. However, they still didn't know where the problem was. They just felt that there was something wrong. Algernon quickly said, "If there are only a few ores left in the mountain, based on the amount of ores sent to the foot of the mountain every day, it should be able to last for about 10 days. However, I can't guarantee that these ores can last for 10 days. This was Algernon's most conservative estimate. It was based on the amount of ores stored and the amount needed every day. If they included the ores that were not smelted in time and the ores in the furnace, they should be able to last for another half a month. However, could it be that there were no more iron ores at the foot of the mountain? The two of them seemed to have thought of this at the same time. They could not help but look at each other. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. 10 days. This meant that the ores on the mountain, as well as the ores stored for research and development, as well as the ores used for experiments, could only last for 10 days. What if they could not find ores or transport ores after 10 days? Zhang Feng could not help but feel his scalp go numb. Zhang Feng sighed. "From now on, I will personally supervise the production of some of the secret parts of the gun. All the research on the mountain will be suspended. Just send the ores to the foot of the mountain on time every day." As for the mountain, Zhang Feng pondered for a moment before saying, "Prioritize the research on the gun first. As for the rest, we will talk about it after we find the ores." Now, Arcanon and Mokito finally understood why Zhang Feng had suddenly asked about this. This was exactly as he had predicted. There were no more ores. Chapter 1172. There were only 3 days left before the start of the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. After deciding on the direction of their future research, Linley and Arcanon rushed into the cave that had been expanded into a warehouse and a workshop. The cave was no longer the same as it used to be. At this moment, all the smelting equipment had been moved outside. Although there was no sound in the cave, Zhang Feng could not help but feel nauseous due to the combination of heat and stuffiness, the sour stench of smoke, and the stench of feet. However, Arcanon and the others seemed to have gotten used to this smell since they were young. For them, Zhang Feng seriously wondered if they had fallen in love with the smell. With the passage of time, Zhang Feng had already learned from the others. He took off his clothes until he was only left with a pair of underpants. He didn't even dare to sit on a stool. Hot butt. He simply lay on the table and explained the principle of the firing pin to them. However, these old perverts kept staring at his butt, which made Zhang Feng a little angry. Damn it, why are you looking at Lao Tzu's butt? However, he did not say it out loud. He could only patiently explain the relevant principles. He did not know how to forge these things, but he was still a talent who came from a professional class. His knowledge of oral knowledge had already reached the point of perfection. Moreover, he had trained in the great Tang Dynasty for so long, so he knew a little about what to make for these people at this time and place. Even though Zhang Feng had already skipped the most important parts, these people still felt uncomfortable listening to Zhang Feng. However, they were deeply attracted by the mechanical structure and the interlocking mechanism described by Zhang Feng. It was not easy. Zhang Feng explained this matter from beginning to end for at least 6 hours. He even directly picked up the charcoal on the ground and listed out the calculation formulas on a piece of white paper over and over again for everyone. After much difficulty, he finally taught everyone how to do it. When Zhang Feng walked out of the workshop, he felt as if he had taken a walk in hell. His mouth was dry and his eyes were blurred. At this time, he just wanted to find a jar of water and take a big gulp. Dean, you're out. At this time, the guard commander, Chuckle, came forward and handed a cucumber to Zhang Feng. He was a little distressed, but he still handed it to Zhang Feng as if nothing had happened. Dean, I know you're not used to the tea there, so I've already prepared a cucumber for you. Cucumber was the old name of cucumber. Looking at the cucumber in Chuckle's hand, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He took it, wiped it, and began to eat it. After eating 2 cucumbers, Zhang Feng finally calmed down. He cupped his hands towards Chuckle and said, "Thank you. You don't have to say, this thing doesn't taste good on a normal day, but now that I'm eating it, it really does feel good. What's your name?" Zhang Feng wanted to say thanks, but he really couldn't remember the veteran's name. The veteran didn't mind and laughed. "Dean, call me Chuckle. Old Chuckle is fine." "Oh right, Dean, I heard from the brothers at the foot of the mountain that someone in the market said that the iron on the mountain is about to run out. Is that true?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but become alert and asked, "Who did you hear that from?" Without waiting for Chuckle to speak, Zhang Sun rushed over breathlessly. "Fengzi, let's go, there's a problem." Zhang Suan's iconic off-white robe, coupled with his coquettish style and the embroidery of white deer college that was one size larger than others to show off his status, coupled with his current appearance, really made Zhang Feng turn pale with fright. He thought that someone from the 5 surnames and 7 desires had come to attack him. He hurriedly asked, "What happened?" Zhang Sun was gasping for breath. How could he have the time to talk? He just pulled Zhang Feng along and ran. He also grabbed the remaining courgette in Chuckle's arms and gnawed on it as he ran. Zhang Feng really didn't know what had happened, but he knew that if it wasn't something huge, Zhang Sun wouldn't be like this. Zhang Feng didn't say anything. At this moment, he couldn't speak even if he wanted to. With Zhang Suan's speed, Zhang Feng seriously doubted that if Lu Xiang was here and ran at the same time, Lu Xiang wouldn't even be able to see this guy's shadow. What the hell? Zhang Feng was almost caught between Zhang Suan's arms. Even so, Zhang Feng still felt like he was about to suffocate. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the two hurriedly returned to the small wooden house. The small wooden house was already filled with people. Even Gao Can and Yuchi Bao Lin had returned from the army. Seeing Zhang Feng like this, Gao Can instantly stood up and directly lifted Zhang Feng from Zhang Suan's pigeon nest. He pushed Zhang Feng to the head of the table and then stood behind Zhang Feng. Just like before. Zhang Feng wanted to shout. But at this moment, he was so tired that he was about to faint. He was too lazy to shout. He looked at everyone and asked, "What happened? Why did you all come back?" The day after tomorrow, the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression became unusually interesting. He pointed at Li Qingqian, trembling with anger. "That's it. Chapter 1173. Because of this thing, he was directly caught by Zhang Sun and brought back from the workshop. Even if Zhang Sun was chasing him, he wouldn't be so crazy, right? This was going to cost him his life. But it was useless to say this now. Zhang Feng calmed down for quite a while before he recovered. His face was dark as he gulped down a large basin of water. Only then did he comfortably lean back on the chair. "Tell me, you guys didn't come back because of the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, right?" Li Qingqian nodded and put away the folding fan in his hand. He nodded and said, "Indeed. Just 2 hours ago, someone spread the news about the shipyard and the lack of iron in the shipyard on the mountain. Do you know?" Zhang Feng glanced at Li Qingqian and then at the people sitting there. He suddenly realized something. This method seemed very familiar. "Did you guys do this?" Li Qingqian and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter. "I told you, we can't hide this from Fengzi. You guys didn't believe me. Do you believe me now?" Mothif *Ker, are you guys looking for trouble? Zhang Feng exploded. These people were so stupid that he wanted to cry. They did think about spreading the news about the lack of iron, and Lao Li also mentioned it. But now, why did they spread the news about what happened on the mountain? This was equivalent to adding fuel to the fire, okay? This was definitely not something that Lao Li would dare to do. It was definitely done by these idiots. Otherwise, these people wouldn't be so happy at this time. Dugo saw that Zhang Feng's expression was abnormal at this time and was about to flip out. He hurriedly said, "Fengzi, we did this because Lao Li told us to." Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard this. He asked, "Why did Lao Li do this?" What he means is that in this way, you can stimulate the anger of the masses faster. At this time, you have already become a godlike existence in the hearts of the people in Chang'an. Think about it. If you lack iron, how can the people at the foot of the mountain not be anxious? In just 2 hours, the market at the foot of the mountain has collected about thousands of kilograms of ironware, not including those delivered to Chang'an City. By doing this, on the one hand, it can ensure that the forge on the mountain will not stop, and on the other hand, it will arouse the hatred of the people. Isn't this the psychological warfare that you taught us before? Zhang Feng was taken aback. That's right. By doing so, the power of the masses would be unleashed to the maximum. Most importantly, this matter was a double-edged sword. Once it got out, it would bring both advantages and disadvantages to him and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. The key to weighing the pros and cons was whether they could find the iron or within this period of time. Zhang Feng looked at the crowd at this time and sighed heavily. He spread out his hands and said, "Come on, this matter is not good for any of us. If we can't find the iron ore, let's wait and play." Li Qingqian heard this and could not help but be surprised. He said, "Didn't you say that there is an iron ore on Longsho Mountain? Could it be? Longsho Mountain is so big. Are you stupid? Are you sure that once you find it, you can move it back and use it? Won't it take time to move it back and forth? Besides, this thing is definitely underground. If you really do that to him, then this time, it will be a big joke. Do you understand?" Zhang Feng forgot to tell Lao Li that the Luochuan iron mine was the same as the coal mines in Lantian County. They were both underground mines. How could they have a chance to get it? It would have been dug out by the Wang clan. Li Qingqian and the others became anxious when Zhang Feng said this. If that was the case, then there was really a big problem. Once they could not find the iron ore, it would be self-defeating. They could not help but look at Zhang Feng in a hurry, trying to find a way to remedy the situation. What could Zhang Feng do at this time? Looking at the few of them staring at each other for a long time, they finally took a deep breath. Everyone thought that Zhang Feng had a solution, but after waiting for a long time, they heard Zhang Feng's two words. Get out. Zhang Feng was really stumped this time. The root of all the problems was to solve the crisis of the iron shortage first, then find the people with the 5 surnames and 7 hopes to settle the score. However, he forgot that these idiots would directly lay their cards on the table. What was there to fight then? Before he even took action, he had already revealed his secret. How could this be? Li Qingqian and the others were also a little confused. It was the first time they met Zhang Feng, but they could not handle things well. They could not help but squat in front of Zhang Feng's door, looking at each other with a guilty conscience. There are only 3 days left until the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. If this is not the case, let's go and find, oh, right. Li Qingqian slapped his head and pointed at Yuqi Baolin. You Baolin, do you still remember what happened in Jiangnan? I remember that there is an iron ore in Jiangnan. Why don't you contact your aunt? I think once your aunt knows about Fengzi's situation, she will probably take action. Yuqi Baolin stared at Li Qingqian in a muffled voice. He said unhappily, if you want to ask, you can send someone to ask. I can't be bothered. I'm afraid of being beaten up. You can't say that, Baolin. We are all doing this for Fengzi, for our father. You have to think carefully. Even your father and my father can't do this. I think Fengzi can't bring himself to do it. Only you are the most suitable at this time. Chapter 1174. In the span of 3 days. Zhang Feng, the people on the mountain, and the people at the foot of the mountain were all busy with the iron mine. The rumor at the foot of the mountain eventually reached the ears of Yu Shinan and the others. Originally, the 4 of them were busy preparing the teaching materials and had to work overtime at night. They did not expect Zhang Feng to be such a troublemaker. On the eve of the Mid-Autumn Festival, they finally finished preparing the teaching materials with great difficulty. But it was also at this time that the 4 of them were preparing to go to Zhang Feng to discuss the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet with him. Unexpectedly, they heard about this matter. They could not help but feel a little annoyed. You are the dean of the academy. Why do you have to worry so much? They clasped their hands behind their backs and walked into Zhang Feng's cabin with gloomy faces. Qing Chumo and the others, who were studying the rhythm of the final dance rehearsal, did not dare to stay any longer. They fled in panic. This time, it was Zhang Feng who suffered. Looking at their unfriendly faces, how could Zhang Feng not know that they knew about the iron mine? Kid, let me ask you. We just heard that the Chang and shipyard made an iron ship. Was it your work? Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, no, no. Respected teachers, I have been on the mountain all this time. Where would I have the time to make such a thing? I'm not a blacksmith. This was something that he could not admit to no matter what. Once he admitted to it, he would be done for. But although his idea was good, would Yu Shinan and the others believe it? Unless they were fools. Sure enough, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, Ouyang Sun was so angry that he directly slammed the table and stood up. I knew you would say that. Kid, we also heard that you are going to go against the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Although this is your private matter and we have no right to interfere, this matter has affected the normal operation of our academy. Once you really fall out with the 5 surnames and 7 hopes, have you thought about whether you can handle it? Don't you know the power of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes?
I know. Zhang Feng also knew that he couldn't pretend anymore, so he could only shrug helplessly. Seeing this, even Xue Ji, who hadn't spoken much, couldn't help but frown. This brat did not look like an impulsive person. Going against the 5 surnames and 7 hopes at this time, wasn't that like hitting a rock with an egg? Couldn't he wait until he was stronger in the future? However, Zhang Feng was not a rash person. Furthermore, they were well aware of the conflict between the 5 surnames and 7 hopes and the royal family. How could they not know that the 5 surnames and 7 hopes were also testing Zhang Feng? Took drastic measures to deal with him. Once the iron boat was formed and there were many of them, it would be the first to pose a serious threat to their trade. Although Li Shimin had opened up trade on the water at this time, they had to go from Chang'an to Luozhou and travel by water. Not to mention that the process was slow. Once something happened in the water, no one would know. However, the iron boat that Zhang Feng had created not only made them helpless in terms of performance, but also made them unable to do anything. It would be strange if they were not angry. In addition, the things that the emperor had done at this time and some problems that the Tang dynasty was facing at this time were more or less related to the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Their purpose was to cut off the newly established trade route between the emperor and Zhang Feng and consolidate their own power and status. With their status, it would be easy for them to find out about this. However, why did they choose to do it at this juncture? This was worth thinking about. During the mid-autumn hunt, it was Guanlong's people who were stirring up trouble. However, Zhang Feng's magical things made Guanlong's people choose to stand on the side of interests. However, this seemed to be the most important point that had angered the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. In addition, Zhang Feng's rapidly increasing reputation value made them feel threatened. After all, they didn't care about a small shrimp, but a lively shrimp, and a shrimp that had the potential to become a dragon. They couldn't just ignore it. At this time, after Zhang Feng's explanation, the 4 finally understood the whole thing and the plan that he and the emperor had made. They once again reprimanded Zhang Feng for unifying the country and asked him to put the interests of the academy first and not always do those useless things. Only then did the joint hearing of the 4 halls end. After all, logically speaking, Zhang Feng was already qualified to be on an equal footing with them. However, Zhang Feng was a talent. They did not want Zhang Feng to ruin himself and take a detour. They wanted to see what kind of waves Zhang Feng could make. This was also their purpose of coming up the mountain. Previously, Zhang Feng had done a great thing, and they had all seen it. Although this kid was indeed unreliable sometimes, he was still going in the right direction. If this matter was not handled well, it might not be just a matter of the 5 families and 7 clans of the team. Zhang Feng, this brat, might have wasted all his talent and knowledge. If it was before Zhang Feng set up the forging workshop, they would not be worried. However, this kid just had to come up with such a terrifying killing machine, then, they had to treat this matter seriously. However, once they were careful, Zhang Feng would be in trouble. He was stunned by the 4 people's words for a few hours. When the cigarette was finished, the few of them strolled away. After the 4 people left, Qing Chumo and the others walked into Zhang Feng's small wooden house with slight trepidation. They wanted to see if Zhang Feng had been tortured to death by these old guys. However, as soon as they entered the house, Zhang Feng blinked his eyes, which were originally a little stiff. "Brotherly Gone, quickly prepare the sedan. I'm going down the mountain now." Li Qingqian's expression finally turned serious. They must have known about the 5 surnames and 7 clans. The reason why the emperor pretended not to know that they were messing around in Chang'an was that he wanted to confuse the 5 surnames and 7 clans.
If they really went to war with the 5 surnames and 7 clans, they didn't even need to think about it. There would definitely be a big problem. As for what the problem was, it had already exploded. Li Qingqian, do you know what the world lacks the most today? Zhang Feng stared into Li Qingqian's eyes and asked. Li Qingqian was stunned. He didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but he still answered, food. Zhang Feng nodded. Yes. In this world, there is no stability without food. Whoever has food can be determined by the world. That's why I spent all my money to stockpile food before, and also the reason why I asked you to stockpile food. It's for the current situation. Although this iron ore is not so serious for us, and the worst case scenario is that our shipyard temporarily goes on strike, what about the farmers? Now is the time for autumn planting. If they do this, they will simply cut off the retreat of the people. How can the people forgive them? Then what do you mean? Did you go down the mountain this time to prepare to cause trouble? Qing Chumo's eyes lit up. He said, if that's the case, then I have a group of good brothers. They are the best at this. Zhang Feng looked disdainfully at Qing Chumo and said, you only know how to cause trouble. Let me tell you, let's leave this matter as it is for now. We have to stabilize. If you really want to cause trouble, then ask your brothers to go to Longzhou Mountain to look for ores. That's more reliable. With this, Qing Chumo instantly fell silent. It was fine to let his brothers eat, drink, and brag, but to ask them to look for ores. Forget it. Qing Chumo didn't dare to think about it. Zhang Feng already knew that Qing Chumo wasn't reliable, so he didn't think much of it. However, Du Go came forward and excitedly hugged Zhang Feng's arm, scaring Zhang Feng. Fengzi, did you go down the mountain this time just to prepare for the mid-autumn poetry meet? Otherwise? Do you think I'm crazy? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and said, now, no one is optimistic about my participation in the mid-autumn poetry meet. There are also many people who want to stop me. But if I really back down, then I will really lose this time. I have to go to the mid-autumn poetry meet, and I have to go there in a grand manner. Not only that, Li Gan, the name of this second street dance will be called the Golden Age of the Tang Dynasty. You guys were able to become the 4 great devil kings of Chang'an. That's all because of your abilities, isn't it? When Li Qingqian and the others heard this, their faces instantly darkened. However, Zhang Feng didn't wait for them to speak and continued, this dance is something that I painstakingly studied for a long time before I researched it from the 8th set of radio gymnastics. Moreover, this thing is also a kind of martial arts. It can reflect the masculine beauty of men and show your yearning for beautiful things. Don't you guys want to spread the positive energy of the Tang Dynasty to the world? Li Qingqian was stunned by Zhang Feng's words. Seeing that it was effective, Zhang Feng continued, let's talk about other things. Didn't you guys say that there will be a lot of girls at the mid-autumn poetry meet? And those palace officials will all come to participate. How good is this? Not only will it let people remember you, but this kind of novel dance will also let people remember you. Don't you want to inherit the family business now? Don't you want to make a name for yourself in your official career? This is a rare opportunity to show your face. If you don't seize it, then you are really finished. Besides, what's wrong with street dancing? You have to know that this is something that my master understood when he traveled to India and other places. In India and Dashi, everyone can sing and dance well, from the nobles and ministers to the common people. Which one of them can't sing a song at any time and place? Dance a song. Zhang Feng bragged about the benefits and finally made Li Qingqian and the others excited again. At this time, Zhang Feng dropped a heavy bomb and said, when the time comes, I will let Jingshu play a song with me to accompany your street dance. Is that okay? Finally, the few of them agreed in ecstasy. As long as you don't feel ashamed, then Lao Tzu and the others have nothing to be afraid of. At the same time, on the mountain, Yu Shernan and the others didn't rest. They sat in the small bamboo house and waited for something. Not long after, Ma Zhou helplessly knocked on the door of the small bamboo house. Ouyang Sun stood up and opened the door. That kid left. Ma Zhou said helplessly, they have left. However, I do not know how long they have been gone. All the guards did not tell me. If not for the fact that this student knows the habits of our esteemed teacher, this student would not know if our esteemed teacher had left or not. Hearing this, the nervousness on Ouyang Sun's face slowly dissipated. He stroked his beard and said, let's go. It's good that we know that kid left the mountain. %. Chapter 1179. Zhang Feng thought about it for a moment and finally felt relieved. The other party was a duke. Although Zhang Feng knew that this guy came to instigate the crown prince to seize power but failed in the end, and that he was a bad guy to the bone, but this guy was very scheming. Now that he came to Chang'an, his purpose was obvious. It was to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. As the name implied, the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet was a gathering of friends through poetry, but it was also a time for all the nobles of the royal palace to recruit retainers. It wasn't strange for him to come at this time. However, Zhang Feng just couldn't figure out why this old man had come at this time. Was it for the crown prince? Or was it for him? But when he thought about how this fellow was so close to his own home, Zhang Feng felt rather uncomfortable. After sending off the old steward, Zhang Feng had a heavy heart and wanted to return to his residence to take a look. After all, Jingshu was the only woman in his residence. Moreover, those guards were in the residence, and they should already know about what had happened to him. Moreover, this was such a major matter, and his own name was also affected. If that Duke of Qin, Ho Junji. Zhang Feng could no longer sit still. He waved his hand and said, let's go home. Li Qingqian and the others had been gnawing on a pot of braised lamb leg. When they heard Zhang Feng's words, they were truly rather taken aback. Qing Chumo still hadn't put down the lamb leg in his mouth, so he asked, go back for what? Zhang Feng's expression was rather grave and irritated. I'll go back and practice with Jingshu's musical instrument until tomorrow morning. Prince Zhang. Just as Zhang Feng was speaking, a shout came from the entrance. A shout came from the door. Zhang Feng turned his head and saw that one of the guards had already walked into the small tavern. Matriarch has ordered for you to quickly return home. Matriarch. Naturally, it was Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu. Did something happen at home? Zhang Feng asked with a grimace. The thing he was most worried about seemed to have happened. Li Qingqian and the others abruptly stopped eating and glared at the guard. The guard hurriedly waved his hands and said, no, it's outside the Ox courtyard, the Ox clan members are outside. I heard that the young master of the Niu family woke up today and was carried to the manor. He said that he wanted to thank you personally and also said that the family head had left the mountain. I only found out about the family head leaving the mountain after waiting. Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. It had been a few days since Niu Jinhu's leg had been reconnected. At this time, Zhang Feng wanted to see how his leg had recovered. Let's go home and take a look. When Qing Chumo and the others heard this, it was as if they had gone to Zhang Feng's residence. How could they be in the mood to eat? They really wanted to be the first to witness such miraculous medical skills. They hurriedly packed up and called for a carriage. Then, they hurriedly returned to Zhang Feng's courtyard. At this moment, Zhang Feng's courtyard felt more like a home. However, Zhang Feng also felt that this courtyard was different from other courtyards in Zhang Feng's courtyard. This place was different in that it was too big, much bigger than other courtyards. Moreover, Zhang Feng also discovered that the location of this courtyard seemed to be at the center of the residence of the 16 Wangs. Not just the other places, even the gate was much larger than the gates of other courtyards. At this time, there were more than a dozen guards guarding it. It looked more like a general's courtyard. The residence of the 16 Wangs was not far from the Eastern Market. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others were in a hurry to return. Therefore, almost as soon as the carriage stopped, Zhang Feng carried the medicine box and hurriedly entered the courtyard. "Master, that Niu Jinhu brought a guest and has been waiting for a long time at the pavilion in the middle of the courtyard." At this time, when an old man saw Zhang Feng appear, he hurriedly went forward. Although the old man looked to be about 60 years old, his face was full of shrewdness, which made him look quite sage-like. Seeing this, Zhang Feng asked, "You are?" The old man hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Master, this humble one's surname is Du, and my courtesy name is Seating. I am from Liang province. Because of the disaster, my family's business declined. In the end, Master Zhang found me and appointed me as your steward." Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. However, he still felt a little confused. "You said you have a stomachache." "That's me." Zhang Feng was speechless. "Damn it, I met Jia Daoren some time ago, and now I have a stomachache. Damn it." However, this was not the time to ask about this. Zhang Feng asked, "Where is the pavilion in the middle of the lake? Lead the way." After all, he had not been to this courtyard many times. He only had a rough idea of the location, structure, and so on. Du Ziding was also stunned, but said nothing and led the way. After about a meal's worth of time, they finally arrived at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Seeing this page, Zhang Feng suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at the sea. This lake, Zhang Feng dared to bet with 100% certainty that it could hold at least 100 ships. This was called King Lake. It really was a lake. Little brother Hu, your complexion has been good recently. Chapter 1181. After all, Niu Jinhu was Niu Jinda's only son. He was also the last hope of the entire family and the entire village. At this moment, when Zhang Feng came forward, Niu Jinda waved his hand and chased away the servant girls serving him. He smiled and squatted beside Zhang Feng, looking at him. Don't underestimate this. In ancient times, Lao Tzu and his son were basically friends. As long as his son was alive, he wouldn't dare to let Lao Tzu squat. He would lie down or sit down, otherwise it would be seen as disrespectful. But at this moment, it was precisely because of this. One could also see Niu Jinhu's position in Niu Jinda's heart. Feng Zi, I'm fine. When my leg recovers, if you tell me to go east, I definitely won't go west. Niu Jinhu was also excited. At this moment, he pulled Zhang Feng's hand, causing Zhang Feng to feel pain. Zhang Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. He was seriously regretting it. Why didn't he break his hand this time? Wasn't this too strong? Lao Tzu was like this, and even more so for his son. Brother Xiaohu, let's not talk about these useless things. Let's take a look at your leg first, okay? Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted and pulled his hand back. However, Niu Jinda laughed and said, Feng Zi, there's no hurry. Xiao Hu has been holding back for a few days and insisted on thanking you personally. If not for the fact that you left the mountain today and the stitches had to be removed today according to your rules, I wouldn't have brought this brat out to embarrass myself. Tell me, that net wall is so simple. I've seen it with my own eyes. So many brats didn't make any mistakes. Why did it have to be him? This clearly doesn't matter. He deserves it. As he spoke, Niu Jinda pointed at Gao Ken and said, But Feng Zi, this student of yours is a good seedling. Why don't you let me train him? In less than a year, I'll give you a soldier seedling. When Zhang Feng heard this, he looked at Gao Ken, whose eyes were burning with passion. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I'll train my own student. If I let you train him, who knows what method you'll use. Besides, do you have such an advanced training method like mine? Zhang Feng was familiar with the art of war at this time. It was simple and crude. If they didn't die, they could become gods. This was also a rule that had always existed in the army. All the soldiers were filled with hostility. Where did this come from? He had been tortured miserably. However, to Zhang Feng, who had participated in countless military training in the 21st century and had watched countless movies and novels about the special forces, this was simply bullshit. Hostility was contagious, and it spread from one person to another. This was also the reason why these people were so brave. Who didn't have a stomach full of anger when they were trying to kill someone in the training ground? On the battlefield, this vicious aura was the driving force that kept them alive. It was also the thing that supported them to kill the enemy bravely. Moreover, this thing was passed down from generation to generation. There were even some people whose minds were distorted because of this. That was why there were so many rebellions in history. Zhang Feng was not willing to bear such infamy. If his students were to be like this in the future, then he would just kill them with a single slash. He didn't want to be implicated in the future. With this thought, Zhang Feng chuckled and interrupted, Hee, old bull, it seems like you have too much energy. Why don't you come with us to remove your son's stitches? When it comes to military matters, the two of us are both idiots. We still have to listen to Duke Chen. At the same time, he also flattered Duke Chen, Ho Junji. It wasn't that he wanted to flatter him. It was that he had no choice but to divert the trouble. He had just offended Ho Junji, and if he didn't quickly shut him up, he would be in for a lot of trouble. If he was targeted, he would be dead meat. This singer was the type of person who would definitely die if she missed someone. However, this also aroused Zhang Feng's interest. When no one was paying attention, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, Old bull, let me ask you something. How did you get to know Duke Chen? At this time, Zhang Feng was staring at Qing Yaojin, Fang Xianling, and the others, who were happily chatting with Duke Chen. He was full of question marks. Logically speaking, these were two completely unrelated people. How did they get to know each other? Niu Jinda didn't know why Zhang Feng would ask this. Thinking that he had discovered something, he hurriedly explained, Hey! I thought it was something big. Old brother, didn't we join the army before? Do you know who our immediate superior is? Zhang Feng was shocked. It can't be him, right? That's right. Seeing that he had fooled around, Niu Jinda said, Back then, when Duke Chen learned of what happened on Mount Qilian, he and General Li Shaogong brought old Yu and the others up the mountain to risk their lives to rescue them. Yes, it was Qing Guogong and Li Shaogong. General Li was touched by us and became close friends. It was also because of this that we were allowed to leave the military. Although we left, we were still considered as non-staff members in the military. Our duty was to prepare supplies for the military. In the past few years, although we are living a comfortable life now, we have been thinking about returning to the military all the time. This is also why we were so excited when we learned that you understood military science and wanted to train Tai Nyo and the other boys. After all, you've seen this group of boys. They've never suffered as children and have been spoiled since they were young. They're not suited for the army. After Zhang Feng examined it, he glanced at the people from the Imperial Physician Court and said, "Brother Little Tiger, wake up, I'm going to use the knife." Chapter 1183. Niu Jianhu was having a sweet dream at this time. He seemed to be dreaming of a girl. How could he know that Zhang Feng was doing something on his leg? If it weren't for Li Shimon's presence, Niu Jinda would have slapped this bastard unconscious in the morning. How could he still have the mood to sleep at this time? But now this guy was sleeping soundly. In addition, the emperor and others were gathered together, so he couldn't say anything. He could only stare anxiously at Niu Jinhu. And Zhang Feng was not careless. It seemed that no one had witnessed the whole process of him showing off, so he soaked the special scalpel in alcohol and carefully cut Niu Jinhu's leg with the scalpel. Ouch. F***CK, who is it? Who the F***CK is touching me? Niu Jinhu finally woke up in a sharp pain, but he didn't dare to move his right leg at this time. After all, there was still a scalpel in it. Under the instinctive reaction just now, the scalpel, which was just looking for thread in the wound, was inserted into the flesh again because of his movement. It was so painful that his legs trembled. Niu Jinhu was stunned. Weren't they just chatting? Why did they suddenly want to cut him? When he opened his eyes, he thought it was Zhang Feng and Qing Chumo who were playing tricks. But when he saw Li Shimon's face, the anger in Niu Jinhu's heart was instantly extinguished. Niu Jinhu couldn't help but be moved at this time. Did the emperor want to let Fengzi cut his leg and then watch the process of bone setting again? Otherwise, what were those F***King imperial doctors doing here? Niu Jinhu was terrified. He didn't dare to experience this pain again. If this were to happen again, it would be a huge joke. At this time, Li Shimon, Imperial Dr. Zhou, and the others automatically filtered out Niu Jinhu's scream. After all, in their eyes, this was a normal thing. His leg was broken. At this time, what else did he want? Even Niu Jinda was staring at Niu Jinhu's leg at this time. He wanted to see if Zhang Feng was going to pull out the bone. He was also very curious whether the bone was really set. But this time, Zhang Feng was a little scared. He stared at Niu Jinhu and said, "Why are you shouting? This is great, the wound that was not easy to heal is now opened again. Why don't you lie down? Come, give him a bowl of anesthetic soup and a bowl of sleeping powder. It's best to let him sleep. Why so troublesome?" Imperial Dr. Zhou also became interested at this time. Seeing that Zhang Feng was going to give him anesthetic soup, he took out a delicate acupuncture cloth bag from his arms. Without waiting for Niu Jinhu to beg for mercy, he instantly pierced it into Niu Jinhu's temple. The next moment, Niu Jinhu fell asleep. After exclaiming the magic of acupuncture, Zhang Feng hurriedly and carefully cut open Niu Jinhu's skin with a small pair of scissors soaked in alcohol. As expected, after waiting for a little while, Ho Junji asked, "Kid, if these are all minor tricks, then there's no one in the entire Tang Dynasty who can compare to you." Ho Junji looked at Zhang Feng with a playful look in his eyes. This brat's words were simply watertight. He didn't know why Zhang Feng was so wary of him, but this was probably one of the things that had attracted Hou Junji's attention. Seeing this, Li Qingqian hurriedly changed the topic. It was all thanks to Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of grain that we were forced to abandon the mountain. Otherwise, there really would have been a major disaster. It was precisely because of these 10,000 dan of grain that Chang and was able to avoid the food crisis. Compared to what we did, it truly was a minor trick. For the suffering common people of Chang and the several thousand students of my Shao Mountain, this student, Li Qingqian, would like to propose a toast to Duke of Chen. Right. This kid was too rude. If not for Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of life-saving grain, how could this kid's academy have its current glory? Only then did Zhang Feng react. He raised his wine cup with a smile and said, "I am Zhang Feng." "Thank you, Duke Chen." Hou Junji sighed, but he still raised his cup and drank with Zhang Feng. Only then did he ask, "Old man, I heard that you are preparing to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet tomorrow." "Yes, tomorrow. This kid truly is going to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet." Zhang Feng nodded. "Is Duke of Chen also going tomorrow?" Everyone knew what the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet was for. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others couldn't help but glance at Hou Junji. Although the smile on Hou Junji's face remained unchanged, he was inwardly getting a little angry. Was this brat trying to test him instead? This really was, he didn't know what he was doing. Zhang Feng's smile was very thick at this moment. He didn't like the existence of uncertain factors, and he also didn't like being led around by others. He wasn't used to this either. But at this moment, that damned Hou Junji did the exact opposite. Beaming at Li Qingqian, he asked, "Young Master Li, old man, I heard that you've been preparing something. Is it to be displayed at tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet?" This, Li Qingqian was rather troubled. On one side was his father-in-law. On the other side was his good brother. He instantly felt a little numb. Just a moment ago, the two of them had been exchanging blows. Why did they suddenly turn around and point their spears at him? Wasn't this too exciting? But after some thought, he glanced at Zhang Sunwuji. Zhang Sunwuji originally didn't want to be the mediator, but now that the emperor had signaled him with his eyes, he would be insensible if he didn't say anything. Cough, Feng Zi, Duke Chen is only expressing his own views on this matter. We came today to see just what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to see what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to help you check things out so that tomorrow, we can start the operation ahead of time. That's right, Feng Zi, why are you so explosive today? Feng Zi, this is your fault. You're not an impulsive person, so why are you so impulsive today? We're all doing this for your own good. Qing Yaojin, Wei Jing, and the others hurriedly tried to persuade him. Only then did Zhang Feng's anger subside. But Zhang Feng wasn't angry. He was doing this on purpose. He wanted to see just how deep Hou Junji was. But now, it seemed that this Hou Junji, it was time to move a little further away. This old scoundrel was even more venomous than a viper. Seeing that he had a way out, Zhang Feng harumphed and said, "Since that's the case, then this little one has wrongly accused Duke Chen. I hope that Duke Chen can forgive me. The second reason we came back today was also for this dance. Since that's the case, we might as well do it all at once. Didn't all of you want to hear my wife, Jingshu, sing a song? Then you're in for a treat today. In a little while, Jingshu and I will perform a song for the army." What was this? Perform a song? You even know how to do this? Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Since when did Zhang Feng, this brat, dabble in this Dao? Chapter 1186. While they were talking, amidst the confusion of the crowd, Zhang Feng hurriedly drove Li Qingqian and the others out of the living room. Then, he mysteriously went off to do something with the others. Li Shimin and the others were stunned. At this time, those who should leave had all left, leaving behind a group of court tycoons. At this time, everyone couldn't help but look at Li Shimin. Although they wanted to go out and see what this group of brats was doing, at this time, the emperor didn't say anything, so they didn't dare to go out and see. Li Shimin also wanted to go and see. Let's wait for a while. You should all know that Fengzi cracked Jingshu's Huge 18 beats last time. I was careless. If this brat doesn't know anything about music, how could he have gotten Jingshu back then? Alas! Everyone sighed softly when they heard this. It was the first time that Zhang Feng came to Jingshu's room. At this time, Zhang Feng was sitting in the living room of Jingshu's room with a gloomy face, looking at Jingshu's room. Jingshu was also sitting beside Zhang Feng with her head lowered, blushing slightly. She kept silent. In fact, Jingshu's heart had been beating fast at this time. Steamed Bun had just told her that she was eavesdropping. She probably knew who was sitting in the living room best in the whole bee garden. But only she knew these things, and she didn't dare to say it out. At this time, Zhang Feng should have come for the music, let her play the music. Zhang Feng was not in a hurry at this time, and no one could see the anger he had when he just came in. Instead, he looked at Jingshu's room with great interest. The room was decorated very elegantly, and it looked like a noble woman. On the four walls, there were all kinds of ancient paintings and ancient characters. On the wall directly opposite Jingshu's living room, there was a woman who Zhang Feng did not recognize. She was holding an umbrella, wearing a fur coat, and carrying a zither on her back. The woman was a natural beauty, but Zhang Feng still didn't know who she was. On the bookshelf next to the picture scroll, there was a dense collection of music scores and other things. Although Zhang Feng did not understand these things, he knew that these things should be priceless. Most of these ancient scrolls are things from Swallow Descent Brothel when we moved last time. They were sent back by our sisters and the procuress. Some of the flowers were gifted by some people. Oh right, when you weren't around last time, the retired emperor and the empress personally came to visit. Most of these were brought by the two of them from the palace. They said that they wanted you to cultivate your sentiments when you have nothing to do, and learn more about palace etiquette. As she spoke, Jingshu glanced at Zhang Feng, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. When Zhang Feng heard this, he did not take it seriously. At this moment, when Jingshu said this, Zhang Feng's interest waned. What does the retired emperor look like? Tell me, and that Empress Zhang Sun, I heard that she is a natural beauty. Isn't she devastatingly beautiful? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, Jingshu covered Zhang Feng's mouth with a pale face. Prince Zhang, don't talk about this anymore. This is talking nonsense about the retired emperor and coveting Empress Feng Yi. This is punishable by death. There was such a damn rule. Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He hurriedly comforted her. Okay, let's not talk about it, let's not talk about it. As he spoke, Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to hug Jingshu's slim waist. The air couldn't help but become a little more beautiful. Zhang Feng's breathing also became a little rapid. After the first experience last time, Zhang Feng was looking forward to this kind of thing between a man and a woman. Moreover, at this time, Jingshu was already his woman. Although they had not done the deed of husband and wife, and had not gone through the wedding ceremony, the whole Chang'an city now knew that they were in a relationship. They lived together, so who would believe that nothing had happened? Moreover, Jingshu was exactly the same as the campus belle Zhang Feng had a crush on in the University of the Future. How could he control himself at this time? His breathing slowly became rapid and Jingshu was the same. Although she also wanted to, when she thought of what kind of people were sitting in her living room, she couldn't help but be shocked. She forced herself to push Zhang Feng away. Prince Zhang, why are you calling me? Zhang, my husband. Don't, there are guests at home at this time. After hearing Jingshu's words, Zhang Feng was also enlightened. A basin of cold water was poured down on his head, suppressing the fire in his heart. With this pressure, the two of them instantly felt awkward. That's right, I came to look for you this time because I want you to play a song with me. Wait, it's in the living room, and, tomorrow at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, the two of us should also play a song. Jingshu's cheeks were burning at this time. She whispered softly, Zhang, my husband, can you let go of me? Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard that. Only then did he realize that he was still holding Jingshu tightly. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He missed Yu, who was far away in Jiangnan. Alas! After a long sigh, Zhang Feng said, I'll write a song now. Later, we'll practice here. Then we'll go to the living room and play together with Li Gan and the others. How about that? Okay, it's all up to you, my husband. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.